This is episode 30 of Counterpoints, brought to you, interestingly enough, by a website called Boomeo, which features the mind of a man I have a lot of respect for, called Fallen, who won 2 majors. Many of us called him the best in-game leader of 2016. He seemed like he was a really brilliant guy who could always find the solution to win. But then actually, what I've learned is he only won those big tournaments when he had this coach guy stood behind him. And ever since that coach guy left, all I'm going to say is no more trophies. Like, listen, you guys draw your own conclusions. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just stating facts. So, usual co-host Moses, as always, looking fantastic in that wonderful lighting of his webcam. You looked better on broadcast before. That's all I'm going to say, Moses.
Yeah, makeup does wonders. Yeah. These beige,
lighting.
Yeah, this jail cell of an Airbnb I'm in at the moment.
So, of course, I was alluding to our guest for this week, which is Zews, who was formerly the coach of Luminosity, SK Gaming, more recently the coach of Team Liquid. So, obviously, what he did, Moses, is, sometimes when you get a game, you play the game on normal mode initially, right? And then once you complete the game, unless you trade it in, you go, right, I've got to put the difficulty setting up, right? I want to play it on nightmare mode. So he was like, okay, I got a Brazilian team to win a major. That's amazing. But you know what? It happened before in history. MIBR, 2006. So now he thought, getting an NA team to win a major, that would be fucking hard. Now, if I can do that, I can do anything. So now Zeus is the coach of Team Liquid. So you know that he is a man who likes a challenge. He's someone who's coaching in NA. And that's something I think we're going to get to in this discussion. How are you doing, Zeus?
I'm pretty good, man. Thanks for asking. Great introduction, I guess. But so far, so great. So far, it's going great, man.
Okay, right. So this discussion was actually, I set up the panel here because I saw Moses losing his mind on Twitter about NA as usual. I think it was around the time that Optic was just losing every single game, and then Cloud9 was failing to get out of the group, even though they only needed 1 win, and they just lost 3 in a row. So I could feel like the power draining out of Moses. He was looking for light all around and he couldn't find any. He's in the darkness.
It's every few months I need to get it all off my chest. I just go on like one quick Twitter rant, call it a night, have a few drinks, and that's my weekend. I lead an exciting existence. You do the same thing, Duncan. You've had a couple Twitter rants in the past few weeks there.
I have from time to time, yeah. So what we'll do first is, because it's actually ideal, we'll cover what happened at Katowice, since we haven't discussed that since our last episode. And in doing so, obviously you're going to see the NA teams didn't get out of the group, so we'll be able to cover that aspect to it. So the way we usually do a tournament breakdown, Zeus, is we'll usually start the opposite way around. We start with who won the tournament, we work our way backwards, okay? We're not going to talk about everyone, but we'll talk about the interesting teams, and I'll do it that way so that by the time we get to Cloud9 and Optic, it's towards the end, and we'll just lead into the discussion about NA. So let's just start. I want to get your take first, because obviously we haven't had you on the show before. I haven't actually heard you comment on this team at all, because by the time you got to Team Liquid was just about the time they were starting to get very good. So Astralis won the tournament. What do you actually think of this current Astralis team? Like, okay, in terms of results, it's hard for anyone to debate they're the best team in the world. But outside of results, do you think Astralis, are they the best team in Counter-Strike?
I think right now it's undeniable that they are the best team. If you analyze their matches and the amount of variations and setups that they have in correct reads, and their players are just on point. They got their confidence back, which we know in Counter-Strike is once that's gone, and they had that period after the TSM early Astralis days. Everyone is like fired up. Zipnix has been amazing. Device has been constant for a while now. Kirby just brought a new light to this team. The in-game leading has been phenomenal. I think they've been putting up they've been showing how it's supposed to be done. The professional way to get to the top and maintain themselves there.
Okay, so that's interesting you would say that, okay, because I know that actually within the community of CSGO pros, some of them, you know what, they don't rush to tell Astralis, like, congrats when they win the tournament, or they may be looking there like, okay, I'll put it this way, okay. In sports, okay, you have the concept of like a player's player, and that's the guy where like every other player respects the way they play or sees a little of themselves in it, or you can't help but respect, for example, the guy who's like really passionate and plays that way. But I know a lot of the pros actually don't necessarily feel that way about Astralis. Like they think that way when they see VP win, okay, or when they used to see NIP win, they see that they like that. So what do you actually think about? You're saying here they play the right way. As someone who's a coach, guys who's done a lot of the cerebral thinking in the game, you like the approach that Astralis takes?
I do. I think that they like to create chaos when when it's the right chances for it. They don't take that many unnecessary risks, and they play safe most of the rounds. But they just like if it's overpass, they will always put the rifle at a distance. They will when they fall back to side, they will have like 2 or 3 bait setups in one single setup, where every time you think you're facing the correct player, there's someone catching you off guard from the side. And I think that's pretty impressive the way they've been able to combine early, mid, and late round stages. They have the correct setups in each of these situations, and that's very hard to see because teams study this a lot. This is what they try to do, but putting it in game in the moment of high pressure, that's when you can tell that a team it's sunk into a subconscious level, sort of. It's more mechanical than it is automated, because normally when players try to overthink these situations, that's when you'll see them hesitate. In CS, 1 second 2 is already a really big deal. And with them, when they're falling back, they already have the idea of where they're falling back to, who's going to go where, and that's why it falls so well into place, I think.
Okay, Moses, you've been a little bit resistant, okay? Everyone who's been following this trend. And listen, I get it, okay? In terms of the narrative, no one wants to see Anders win, okay? No one wants to see Thorin win, and then the team that Thorin said win be correct. Because in a way, on the most minuscule level, it feels like you're letting me win. But I don't play for Astralis, Moses. So you don't have to hate Astralis just because you hate me on some deep level. But what do you think? Okay, Moses, after this tournament, I know you were really leaning. I believe on this show you even said Virtus.pro was going to win the tournament. Now, we'll get to that in a second, mate. We'll get to that in a second. So I just want to know what you think about Astralis winning the tournament.
No, I mean, even leading into Katowice, I don't think there was any doubt that they're the best team in the world. They do, I mean, like Zeus said, they do a lot of cool things that are very, very smart. I think probably the most impressive that even a lot of pro teams really struggle with is when like something happens in the mid round, when like the early stages of an execute goes poorly or doesn't go as planned, or they lose a player they didn't expect to. Their ability to just calm everything down, and all the players across the map just get patient, and they find a way to get back into it as a team. So it's not just like someone has to make some kind of a play. It's, all right, everyone pause for 20 seconds where you are, keep the control we have. And then Glaive, you can kind of like see Glaive starts kind of tinkering and telling people where to go. I think that's very tough to deal with. Their CT sides are very, very strong as well, like with the bait setups, just the mobility, their ability to kind of read what's coming and rotate players in the right position. So, yeah, I mean, even heading into Katowice, despite picking Virtus.pro to win that, I think they're pretty much. I don't think there's an argument that they're number one anymore. Absolutely not. And the scary thing about them now is if you look at their wins this year that they've had at the major, Device was incredible for the whole tournament. Fell off during the finals. KRB picks up the slack. He's an MVP in the finals. Katowice, where they win, it's Zipnix, who is breaking the record for clutches in one tournament, who's going apeshit the whole tournament up until the grand finals, and then he kind of dips off. And it's Dupree who comes up with these heroics and has a monster series. So look at how deep this is in terms of the players that are able to step up at throughout an event as well. It's not like one player just has a sick event. It's like this player needs to step up like right now when he hasn't had to this whole tournament and he's there. So that's what makes them also extremely dangerous. That's just a new facet. That's a luxury that most teams just don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that's crazy about that lineup. It used to be the same with the lineup when they had Cage and B as well. Like, just the depth of the team is ridiculous. Because here's the thing. Just look at SK in the era, actually, I was kind of joking about before, but in the era after Zeus left, when they made all those semis and all those finals, and they were always on the brink of winning, and in pretty much every single game, Cold Zero still had like MVP numbers, he still looked at Fallen still had all those AWP kills, but something was a little bit missing. I mean, now we can look and say FNX's performance obviously dipped a little bit, but that's the thing. When if you're trying to be the champion every tournament, odds are one player not only isn't going to be winning the game for you every time, but it's going to take more because you're facing other all-time great teams.
By the way, that was one of my big question marks about this team. Just heading into events was like if they're star players, if Device has an off game, if KRB has an off game, who's going to be the one to pick it up? And we've seen 4 different players do it. Glaive even does it in spurts. Like he's had a couple very, very good matches. But I mean, just more importantly, the fact that he could just have one round where he just gets like 4 kills or gets that one impact kill that opens up a bomb site, that's huge. So I mean it's hard to say that there's any more unanswered questions about this team of how they can win matches under tough circumstances.
Okay, well, Moses, here's the thing. We're going to be talking about Astralis for a lot more episodes, especially probably at the beginning of the episodes like I described. So here's my question for you, my friend. You weren't so convinced in the last episode. So is there still reluctance? Like, going forwards, okay, we know G2 is going to be at Star Ladder. We know Fnatic's gradually maybe getting it back together. Virtus.pro still here. All that, like, super competitive era that we're all hoping to see. In theory, we're still building into it, Maybe it hasn't hit the insane peak where everyone's super good. Do you think that Astralis do they have the scene in their grips at the moment, or do you still see someone else overtaking them in the next, like, 2 to 3 months? What do you think?
I don't think like I said, I still stick to I don't think this is going to be an Astralis era. And that's not a knock on Astralis. That's just more like you said, there's just so many good teams. We even saw FaZe give them a good fight. And that's the crazy thing about Astralis, even in the grand finals, much like the major, where it feels like on a certain level Virtus.pro should have won that. There's a world where FaZe wins that final in Katowice 3-0, where Dupree doesn't get that Deagle ace on overpass, where he doesn't have the heroics in the next map as well. Like, I mean, that's what's so crazy about this. But I don't think they're going to have an era the way there was a Fnatic era or a NiP era or even SK. We kind of give them that era from last year.
See, I like that, Moses, because here's the thing.
Doubling down.
You can say that all you want. Like, Zeus, comment on this, okay? So you remember when everyone told you, you know what? Oh, you guys did so well in Luminosity. But you know what? Na'Vi should have won the major, like Guardian. Oh, his hand was, like, injured. And you know what? Fnatic was the best team, but Olaf got injured. It doesn't really matter, does it, if they say, oh, it should have, and oh, we were so close. It only really matters if you have the trophy, right?
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we did everything. Everyone that showed up against us, we played to win, and we won, right? Yeah. We can't do anything if they showed up without a left hand or without a right arm, because that's on them, unfortunately, right? Of course, I'd love to have faced Fnatic like in that. Everyone wanted to see, because they were kind of what inspired us, right? At first, it was Na'Vi. We wanted to beat Na'Vi because there was that huge rivalry. That was our first step. After we were able to beat them at Starlighter the first time, it became that now we want Fnatic, right? Because they were the big dogs at the time. And we practiced as hard as I've ever seen anyone practice just for that. We never got a chance. So for us, it sucks as well. But no one can ever take the credit away from us, because everyone that showed up, we showed them how to play. I mean, the finals of Cologne as an example. Liquid had an amazing tournament, and we controlled that game very easily because we were understanding the game very well at the time. After that, there was a break and things changed, of course. I'm not going to say it's just me, but like once everyone started to understand how we were working the system, it changed. But until then, we dominated the scene.
Wait, I have a question for Zeus now, because I think, Duncan, you actually asked me this during the last episode.
Okay. Your
match against Liquid, Zeus, Coldzera's jumping AWP. Should that have happened? Should you have won that match?
Honestly, I think
that laugh is all I need to know right now. Come on.
That semifinal, we were so confident, and Liquid were just playing out of it. The crowd in Columbus, like, a lot of people don't remember this, but it was one of the first times we had something that big without boots, at least for us, right? And the crowd for Liquid was insane. So we couldn't hear anything. The pressure got to us. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was really big. And after that, it sort of just turned everything around for us. We're like, okay, if that happens, something's got to be up the sleeve where we can come back from this. But that's insane. Should have never won that.
The crowd got real quiet after that one. I remember.
You know what, Moses? In general, I'm personally, I'm not a tattoo fan. I don't like. I usually think, what if you regret having that letter? But if I actually jumped up on a match that I was about to lose and no scope doubled someone, then went on to win the match and the major, I might just get a tattoo of that myself, because you're not really going to regret that one in 20 years. You're just going to look at that and go, oh, that's right, yeah, most ridiculous moment ever.
What was it as well? He got that E-League paid for that one, didn't they? They got him that tattoo artist from California that's on all the TV shows, like LA Inc. or something like that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Chris Nunez, but he had an incident, so we got Chris Garver, which I think is like the studio owner, along with from the Miami Inc. days.
Yeah. So some fucking crazy. He had just sick tattoo. It was sweet.
Okay, so what do you think, Zeus? Like, what is your prediction? I mean, I've kind of set it up there because I don't want it to be too unfair. Like, I hate it when people go back and find a clip from, a year before something happens and like, oh, this person said, like, the most famous one, is when Pasha said, like, Kingwin had no chance against them. But they did, like, change two players before they beat them, So, with the context that this is a pretty insane era if you look at all these teams on paper, Do you think Astralis can do it? Can they be, like, number one in 3 months from now?
I think they can, but I don't think it's as clear-cut as... Like, when we did it, I will be honest, I think the scene was easier, right? Now, if they do it, they will have a tougher time getting to that, right? There are so many good teams and so many teams that are fighting for potential, like FaZe as the example you gave. They just came onto the scene with Nico now, and they've been getting better and better and better, and they're going to keep doing. VP is always there. One little swing can go the other way. G2 has been doing badly online, but that's never going to be LAN. We don't know how these guys are going to show up to LAN. It's the Fnatic, you can never count them out as well on LAN. So this is a really tough era to, if you can dominate with so many fucking amazing teams, basically, that will be the most impressive era I've seen. But I don't think it's as clear-cut as that. I think they're going to have a hard time. I agree with Jason a little on that.
No, well, the funny thing is, like, I definitely agree with you on that one. Like, I don't think it's as clear-cut. Like, I definitely wouldn't say they're going to win all the tournaments, you know. But I will say that's actually something that for them should be very motivating, is if you think about people like Device, where, you know, they've been in like a million semifinals, and most of the time they lost. So if you're that guy, actually, this should be why you should be so motivated, because you're the number one team, and if you were to win most of the titles in this area, you get even more props than probably anyone in history, you know, because it's like, this is the nightmare mode version of trying to complete the game of Counter-Strike, you know. If you can win in this period, no one can talk to it at that point in time, you know. It doesn't matter what happened in the past at that point. Okay, so we mentioned FaZe there. They're obviously the team that were the runners-up here. And coming into the tournament, even though they did get Nico, looking at all the teams in this field, I don't think anyone would have had them in the final, because you have got VP, you've got SK Gaming, even some of the teams that have been hanging around the top area, the North, obviously potentially Na'Vi, it's always dangerous on paper. Now, I actually do think this tournament right now is a good example of why last year when Nico was stuck in mouse sports, and people used to be like, oh, you know, yeah, he's amazing in like, you know, lower games or like group stage games, but would he really do it in the playoffs, you know? And basically, he only had 2 chances to in the entire year. I always used to just think, you don't know how many of those top teams hope he stays in fucking mouse sports. If this guy ever ended up in a good team, they don't want someone doing that shit when he's in a good team. What do you think, Moses? Come on.
This was unfucking real. This was like Nico, like hard, like even like he was even like carrying in a team that had incredible players around him, and it's not like he was the only player doing anything. But the fucking Deagle rounds, like this team all of a sudden is scary on all 15 rounds and a half. It's unreal the amount of pressure he can apply with a Deagle, and then just Kerrigan's ability at times to just be like, all right, Nico, like you could see, because we were all worried, would he get chained in? And yeah, this is early on. I think they had less than a week, but there are rounds where like he just walks up a ramp at his own discretion, like through a smoke, gets 2 kills, opens up the entire bomb site, forces an entire team to shift to pay attention to him, and then it opens everything up for Kerrigan as an in-game leader, for Aldo to get picks to the op. So this is now like, I think, I don't remember if we did like a dark horse for this event when we did our predictions last time, but like FaZe might have been like the best dark horse pick you could have had just with Nico going in, to see like having to have like seen where he could elevate this team. And very early on, like it's scary. Like imagine what happens when there's time, because that's going to be the dangerous thing, when he's actually able to get worked into some kind of idea, some kind of plan. But surely just like the amount of pressure that he can apply when people know it's him, when his opponents know that it's Nico, that is going to force people to play a little bit differently than if it was any other player.
What do you think, Zeus? What do you think of the new FaZe?
I think they are looking scary right now. He got even Alu going off in this tournament, right? It seems that Nico's joining this team added that flair that the team need. They fully believe in themselves now. They are amazing players. I mean, during my brief moment as a player in Immortals, I thought the best player I played against skill-wise was Rain, right? And on this team, we have Rain and someone that Nico, who's outshining Rain in these moments. That is insanely scary. And I think that with time, we never know, right? Because since this is like a mixed region team, so many things can go on in terms of their culture being different to work out with each other. But on paper, they are one of the teams that if they follow the guidelines and it goes as it's supposed to, they will reach the top for sure soon. Right? They will be fighting for these tournaments. This wasn't a one-time thing.
Well, the funny thing is, like, if I was Kerrigan, okay, I would actually say, like, publicly, I'd be like, yeah, it's a great team and stuff, and I'd be trying to build that, like, you know, we're working our way towards being champions one day. But he didn't use what could have been the excuse, which is like, but, you know, I am working with a lot of people from different countries, and, you know, we don't have the same culture, and we've got to kind of, you know, we've got disadvantages essentially compared to every other team. Well, I did a Reflections interview, and that's going to come out next week. And he basically is all in on the idea. Like, he actually thinks that this team has so much potential to succeed that he thinks if they do, that it's going to change Counter-Strike, and you'll get more teams where, say you are stuck in a country where, you know, you have the two really good players, but you don't quite have the rest of the people around you. He thinks that in the future, if FaZe can succeed, people will start doing those international teams, you know, and as long as you've got a good leader and everyone can speak enough English, we'll have more of these teams where it's like, you put together the talents and then you just work on the other aspects, you know.
It makes sense even from like a behind the scenes and like almost a business standpoint as well, with all the contracts and the buyouts you're going to have. I think we're going to start seeing organizations, especially like organic esports organizations, look to players from other regions like this to bring them in, because buyouts now are just insane. They're just ridiculous, especially for organizations grown out of esports that don't have like VC or like professional sports backing. The only answer is to go for some kind of a cheap option. And that means go for someone who's from a region that doesn't get a lot of attention, who hasn't had a lot of time in the professional scene, and go for like an amateur or semi-pro player and just hope that he develops into something good over the course of a year. So, I mean, I think we're going to start seeing that more. I think the first people who really tried it, I mean, I imagine it would be the North American teams, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see that being true. The one I agree with most of the things. The one thing that scares me, and this from personal experience, is that like Thorin said right now, they have to have good English, right? Because I consider my English pretty good, and coaching Liquid now. Besides that, I had to learn the new spots. When it's time for me, like an online play here, where I'm helping with comms and trying to do something like that, it sometimes just gets mixed up in my head like really fast. Even though I have good English, when it's that spur of the moment, you need some fast call out or something like that. That's when it could go wrong. I know all 5 of these FaZe players have it, but I don't see the whole scene from Europe like having that perfect English to try something like this. So I think it's going to be a slow start. Start getting those pieces until everyone gets on board with the idea that this might happen, right?
Sure. I mean, the thing about FaZe at this tournament was, what was great was they never really let up. Like, they were great in the group stage. Obviously, they were monsters in that semi-final. Like, I thought Immortals should have had a chance to go like 3 maps, you know, really test them. It just never happened. They were just fantastic. And then obviously you get to the final. Here's the thing. This is an example of a best of 5 series where it's true, Astralis were clearly the better team. And the fact that, you know, you're winning your opponent's maps is like a really great sign. But every map was close. You know, it wasn't like there was any 16-3s and like, you know, oh, FaZe just can't play that map, right? Next map. You know, the fact that this was the first tournament, obviously real promising stuff from FaZe here. My only issue going forwards is, I don't know if they're going to be a team that's going to win many tournaments, because I feel like with all those different parts, and it's only one tournament, it's still kind of a puzzle as to how you put them all together and how they work together with each other. Because remember, most of the players, you know, until they join FaZe, they have no history. A lot of other teams you have, at least you have the core, you know. You have the 2 players who've been together for 4 years, or you have this player who used to play in a team with someone before. That's what every other top team pretty much is building off. So I think FaZe still have to do a lot to work on like the team play aspect, you know. They've already got the skill, we know that. Clearly, Carrigan's a fantastic in-game leader, but everyone else has a little bit of a head start, I think, in terms of the team play. So my issue for them is they can also suffer from how competitive the year is. You know, I look at all the other teams, and I think some of them are a bit bigger favorites to be number 1. I think instead FaZe is like that upset team where if everyone goes off, they'll win like a huge semi or they'll win a big series. But I don't know if they're going to win titles personally.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have the power to. The big strength they have for them is, we've talked about this in shows past, Duncan, is they're under that situation right now where like all the individuals like start getting better as individuals when the team like starts gelling and clicking together, where they're getting to that whole new level. Like we saw Kiyoshima struggle for the longest time. We saw Alu, like a shadow of his former self that got him into NIP. And now these 2 players are playing unreal within this squad. I mean, yeah, it's nice having the leader, but all the pieces are better individually than they were just, you know, a couple months ago when they were apart. So Kerrigan actually has this team, like headed in a really nice direction. I think it's hard to say that they're going to win an event, but I mean, I don't think it will shock me if it ever happens.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to put it for sure. The thing about FaZe is like, and this is gonna sound like a weird comparison, but in a way, they remind me of a better Immortals, right? When FaZe has things going for them, when they have that momentum, it is so hard to stop them with this lineup of individual talent they have, right? Immortals, they reached the finals of this event. They were amazing, but you could tell like Henny was hitting everything. Their shots were going everywhere, right? When they build it, when they start going, they don't stop, and that's how I see FaZe winning tournaments. They're just when they wake up on that day where they step out of bed with the right foot and everything goes right. Those days are going to be hard. Even the most set teams, right? If the other team is hitting their shots, there's nothing you can do at the end of the game. It's just really hard. And I see FaZe as one of the most firepower based lineups out there for sure.
What just because you brought up Henny, since you played with him, like what is it that like this is now 2 years in a row where he's been incredible on this Katowice stage? I don't think it has anything to do with like Poland or this specific tournament, but like what is it that at other
magic.
Yeah, what is it about like other events that makes him so like? I mean, it's just so drastic between his high performance and his low performance.
I mean, for me to say something like that is going to be more of a guesstimate than anything, right? Because I try to study it and find an idea behind it, but it's really like unpredictable. It's just him waking up on his day, everything being fine. Katowice, I'm pretty sure it's one of his most important memories, right? It's the first time he had some huge event was last year, and that's why they went fired up into this year. It's was one of the most important events of the year for them in terms of how much they enjoy the event and what it means to them personally. So I think that's what made them get fired up for this event for sure. And as for Henny as an individual, honestly, he has the fastest reactions I've ever seen, but sometimes his head's not in the game, and if he starts missing shots, he'll just keep missing shots, right? He'll either have an amazingly good run or an amazingly bad run. I don't see a level of consistency midterm, which is sort of what I see very important in an opera. And that's not saying anything against Henny because I think he's phenomenal, but these top teams, right, it's nice if you can win one match or another, but if you can't keep your consistency to every map, at least be getting the fundamental basic kills that you have to the ones where you're in a position where the guy just walks into your aim. If you can't get those kills, it's going to be hard for a team to structure itself around you because they can't structure around something that's not consistent.
Okay, so when you say that, okay, obviously you were in Immortals before they had this period where you left the Liquid and they brought in Steel. So that's actually, the way you described it there is how I want to ask about it, because if you wanted to have someone make a frag movie, Henny is an ideal candidate, okay? When he has a really great game, it's going to look amazing because it's going to be so fast and so many repeats and flick shots. But the problem is if you're the in-game leader of that team, as you're kind of saying here, ideally, you actually want someone more like an Alu, actually. You want the guy who just hits that same shot, takes the same angle every time, and you know that that's going to happen, and that's what you're going to base the tactic off. How did you actually try to use Henny when he was on your team? Like, what was the challenge in that sense? Because as Moses is alluding to here, it's so up and down with this guy, you know?
Yeah, so the way I tried to do it in the Immortals and the way I saw it best at the time is those days where Henny, he wakes up and he'll tell you before a game if he's feeling confident, right? You can just, he's so outgoing, you can tell by the way he's doing it. So in those games, we had a default system pretty close to the system in SK where we get map control and rotations. But if a player like that is saying he's going to hit every shot, you just let him take his own peak. So if we're playing train, we find little individual moves and plays so that he would have an opportunity to take one shot and fall back safely without dying, right? If he's on his days, he will get those, and we would almost always start in the 5v4, and that's when we'd start rolling. If he isn't on those days, he won't. You will feel it too, but you will just put him into more of an Alu style of play. I think there's no comparison, no offense to Alu in this one, but I think Henny is just, like, if Henny can get that consistency, I think he will be the best pure opper in the world right now. Right, okay. And I wasn't able to do it. I'll just admit it. And I think he still has maybe a little more time to go. I think it's going to come something more naturally to him and his mindset of just being accustomed to playing these huge teams and not understanding really what's going on. Because you need an opper to explain it to him, right? If Fallen would be the best person to explain it to him, because op movement is so different than rifle movement, and I think he's been doing actually pretty well by himself getting there.
Sure. I mean, that's exactly the way you described it there is also the issue, is that sometimes when you have a player like that and he's your star player, you usually want to think, okay, this is actually the way an approach a lot of coaches take. They think, oh, well, the player knows what's best for him. So they let the player tell them, like, oh, I want to go to here, I want to do this. But the real problem is what you said on the flip side, which is when they're having a bad game, sometimes that's actually when you need to like take over for the player and be like, okay, listen, it's not working at the moment. Come back into the system. Come over to this spot. You know what? We can get you an easy kill here, or you can just cover this simple angle. I know you can cover. And it takes away the pressure to go off and have to carry the game when you're not, you know, because if you're missing your shots as an AWPer, it's way worse than being a rifler. You know, a rifler can not be hitting headshots, but, you know, he's doing damage. He's covering his position still. If the AWPer's just missing at certain angles, he's gonna feel bad because they're gonna get overrun.
Yeah, and team-wise, he's going to screw up the entire economy of the team, right? Everyone's going to have to drop for him, and the op is the most important reason that I see for in terms of economy. Why teams will fail or succeed is because if the op is not going well, some teams will actually kind of force the op into keep taking this position. He's not going to be confident. He's going to be losing. We're going to be losing economy, and that's something cool that we see in players like Mixwell, who will in the instant of like drop and just go full 5 rifles, whatever. I think that's a really cool tendency that CS is going to start moving towards. These oppers are going to have to learn how to be pure hybrids as well. We're falling away a bit from the purebred natural only opper, right?
Yeah. I mean, it certainly looks like it. Like, there's not that many primary AWPers now that you look at, and they're all performing all the time.
Well, I mean, if we could sidestep just really quick and do like a little bit of an aside, that's one of the big docs that there's always been about our good buddy JDM.
Yeah, I mean, Josh. Don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic offer, and I'm not going to lie. He needs work on his rifle, but if you check over the last 6 months or so, he's been working on it a lot, right? He's been, even with the op, his positioning wasn't ideal before, and I think that's, from what I understand, that's how kind of the system that Liquid had running before him, right? And when he joined, he wanted to be a CLG style player where they set him up, everything around him, but Liquid didn't work like that, right? And they kind of put him into more hidden positions, only safe positions, and JDM with the op needed more. So first he needed to get back into the rhythm of being put in position to get some important kills and make plays, and because he is a playmaker. And now he's working a lot on the rifles, and just when he's rifling, he's full supporting for someone, so he will do the important nades or anything like that, be a distraction, and if needed, he will jump first. He's getting really good aim with the rifle, right? He doesn't necessarily need the movement of one, but if he's not opping, we're putting him now into positions where he will open up side for us, and someone will trade off him if that's the case, right? And he's such an amazing team player because not everyone is an understatement. Very few people think of only playing for the team like that, especially an opper whose stats can honestly, if he doesn't have the op, his stats can go to shit. The community, all the fan base, everyone will just like witch hunt him, right? But if he really doesn't care, that's really important for the team.
So, okay, on the topic of Immortals, they were actually one of the teams, if you remember, Moses, that I actually did pick. I said they would get out of Group A. I had them primed, and one of the reasons I had them primed, actually, as I said, I saw FNX as someone where, he clearly was struggling at the end of SK, but I saw him as someone in SK who had to just be more of a supportive element. He didn't really have any opportunity to be a star player. There's so many talents in that team. He literally had 3 star talents ahead of him, So his job was be a veteran, be a role player, allow these guys to shine, and then hopefully you win the title anyway. And that's kind of what you put your ego on if you're the support players. Like, I just want to win the title, It's not about being called the best player. But you bring him into Immortals, especially when they're losing Phelps, they need a bit more firepower. They need a bit more of that kind of guy he's gonna take over some of the game. And so you saw at this tournament, it's already kind of begun, that I don't know that, like, I actually unfortunately see this as a team where, because of all the other elite teams, I don't think this team's going to be going very deep in a lot of tournaments, but I do think they're much improved from where they were a few months ago, and now they actually look like they've got a map pool again for a start off.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna. I agree. They're not going to go far in a whole lot of tournaments. I don't think you can hang your hat if you're Immortals and say FNX has got to be our star player. He's got to be that missing firepower that we had. I just don't see that happening necessarily. I think the big thing, more than even FNX's addition to this team and him being a little bit more free, is what we just talked about, is Henny having an incredible tournament. I think without him, they don't make it to the semifinals. Maybe they get out of groups. But this team needs more than FNX. They need consistency out of their opera, I think. And then they need Bolts to get back to like a really good level. Remember when, like, even before FNX joined, Bolts was like one of like the massive stars of this team. He's had a couple tournaments where he was just a beast. So they need more of that. And yeah, I think unfortunately, them getting to the semis here, I think that's more of like a one-off, like an overachievement than what we'll see moving forward. I don't think we're going to see Fnatic placing below them at much longer. I think Fnatic will get up there. NIP is just like a big question mark at the moment, but I think moving forward, I think we can pretty much rely on Fnatic, getting a higher placing than Immortals more often than not.
Like, the thing to me is, if you looked at the quarterfinals especially, North is one of the best top teams this Immortals could want to play, because the map pool was pretty solid, actually. It gave them a real good chance on all the maps to play. So I think if they get that again, then they're like a good upset chance. They could if they play a team that wants to play Mirage and these kinds of maps, yeah, they got a good shot at it. But if they have to play against a team that can go like, deep as like Nuke and it's going to be harder there.
By the way, I'm pretty sure it was North we saw this on when they beat North on Cobblestone. One of the big benefits to that for the Immortals guys is North made this error like 3 times in this tournament of playing so deep into the A bomb site and not even looking for information. There were like 2 rounds. I think one was against Virtus.pro as well, where like both VP and I think in a 100% confidence it was FNX, just literally walked into the A bomb site. And there was one player in like the back right of the site peering over the top towards mid, and one player on the left on that like half broken wall peering over that roof towards like halls in mid. And neither of them looked for anyone to just quietly walk into the site. And both times they got like double killed and just lost the bomb site. So there were some really uncharacteristic key errors out of North. I mean, not to take anything away. I don't know if that would have changed the outcome of the match, but I think Immortals caught North at a pretty bad time in their run.
What do you make of Immortals at the moment, Zeus?
Well, I agree with you that FNX and SK and FNX and Immortals is just a completely different role for him and what to expect of him, right? And SK, he was that role filler. He has insane aim, but his positioning is sometimes off. He will be in the middle of nowhere, but catches him off. He was a surprise element over there. In Immortals, he's going to be the anchor of responsibility for the team, right? And they're going to look up to him, and he's been doing pretty well most of the time on and off, right? But I don't know how he's going to react to that, because the pressure on him, you know this, right? Ever since they won ESWC in 2006, FNX is basically a legend in Brazil. He's a god. He had a saying, I think it was 2005, where he said, the team I'm on will be the best team in Brazil. And he's gained so many fans from that. And it sounds like an asshole, but it's been proven true. Every time he's been on a team, that's when the teams have won the majors equivalents, gotten their farthest runs. And to put that pressure on him in Immortals, that's going to be a lot. And FNX, his personality, he really charges out of everyone on his team. So Bolts, I'm pretty sure that his dip in performance is because FNX is going to be putting pressure on Bolts to step up his game. And Henny, he really loves FNX. It seems to be doing well. But when that doesn't go so well, right, FNX can kind of bring down the team with those things as well. And not just saying that on his negative sides, but because he has so many positives, but that's one of the things that can happen. And in Immortals, I feel that their mindset isn't as good as the SK guys, right? When FNX would say those things, they knew how to understand it, change positioning, and adapt to what he was saying, because it was for the good of the team. And in Immortals, from personal experience, it might come down to getting some egos hurt, right? Some people getting hurt. So I think that this result is one of their best for sure. If they face, of the Tier 2, I see them as one of the top contenders up there, right? They're fighting. But to the VP, Astralis, SKs, Fnatic, G2, Navi's, there's going to be Navi a little less, but it's going to be harder for them, right? Against anyone else, they should have a better chance. So it's going to go a lot in brackets for sure.
Okay, but try this on for size, okay? So you say that, okay? I agree with you, by the way, especially when people are like either younger or inexperienced. Sometimes it can shake them a little bit, if someone's like really tough on them. But the problem I have with Immortals as a team is, if this was last year, I'd say, okay, yeah, maybe treat these guys like really gently, they're new to the top level of the scene. But it's been a whole year now, and they've gotten good, but they never quite got to the level we all thought from the potential, And so, okay, you were in the team at one point in time, and you were probably playing that role, trying to demand greatness of some of them. But the problem is, you were just coming back as a player, you were never going to be the best player in the team. The difference is, when FNX comes in, like you're saying, he is a legend in Brazilian Counter-Strike. And yeah, listen, he's not going to be Nico in the team, but he can be one of the better players. And so I think that's sort of a leader where you can kind of do it by example. So it's not just like you're barking at him. It's like, we've got to do this, but look, I'm doing it as well. Like, I'm leading this way, I'm playing this way. I think that could also go the other way. I think it can fire these guys up, and we can see if they are going to go to the next level or not.
If it plays out like that, I agree with you. I just don't see it playing out where I think he will charge that of them, ask them of that, but I don't think he's going to lead by example necessarily in those cases, right? Because the thing is, even with it's really hard when you have like 15 years of the game already, like FNX have, to keep that motivation to keep going 120 hours, 140 hours every 2 weeks, and keep those numbers and study the game and understand like that. Since he's not the in-game leader, so he's gonna have to listen to, at least in some level, to Steel, and that's gonna create a conflict there. I'm pretty sure, right? And I'm not saying anything negative against Steel. It's just in their personalities. That's how I see it playing out. It could be wrong, but it's how I see it, right?
Okay, so there was that. I don't know if you saw this post, okay, Zeus, but it's true as well that every single member of this lineup of Immortals has at one point in time been cut from a team by Fallen.
Yeah,
like,
I've heard that.
So that's the worry for me, okay, is I think in terms of talent, I like these pieces. I still think they could be used and be better, but is there any kind of a mentality in the team, do you think, where they kind of feel like we're just the second best in Brazil, or maybe we're not going to be better than we are now? Do they have the right mentality? Do they have strong confidence, do you think?
I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but no, I think that is one of the biggest things with Immortals is that they see themselves as a farm team for SK, right? And that's not necessarily true because they've proven it before. They've beaten SK, and certainly it's not going to be consistent, but they, like I said, if they are on those days, they can beat them, and they shouldn't think like that. They should aim higher, but I don't see their aim to be the best team in the world. Their aim is to try to be the best team in Brazil. They still see themselves behind, and that's always going to be bad worldwide because they're going to be planning to play against SK, not going to be planning to play against the rest of the world, right? And SK isn't the top of the world anymore right now. They are at the heads, but they're not the head right now.
Sure. Okay. So the other team that made it to the top 4, another surprise, an even bigger surprise, which was this Heroic team. Now, first of all, I think one thing I have to say, just to be fair, because people are thinking that I'm just going to like brag about how I predicted it. I didn't actually. What I said was I thought they would get 2 upsets in the group, and I thought they still wouldn't get out of the group. But I did say that the key reason, I mean, there's other reasons, but the key reason why was they actually got this crazy group where every single team in the group was going to, in theory, let them play one of the 3 maps they like to play. Now, you're almost never going to get that in this kind of format. You know, if you're playing 5 opponents, usually there's going to be one who has like the opposite map pool to you. And then secondly, the other detail I do want to add is they did have this weird format where if you win the group, you go directly to the semi-finals. I think it would have been a bit different if they've had to play a first-round opponent, you know. So I still think they did really well at this tournament, but like saying top 4, it's not the same as top 4 at a tournament where you play quarterfinals and then you win that match, you know. So with all that stated, what did you think of Heroic, Moses?
Honestly, I actually didn't get a chance to see many of their matches while we were there. They weren't the ones that we were featuring on the main stream the whole time, so I only got to see like one, maybe 2, I think. Okay. I will say that it's hard because and this is going to sound maybe this could be a little bit wrong. I'd have to go back and watch the VODs because when you have a team like Heroic that enters a tournament like this that is such massive like underdogs, and you know they're playing Virtus.pro, they're playing SK, they're playing Navi and North. You kind of watch the game like when we're in the green room and we have just the stream up, we don't get a click around. Like you kind of watch the game from Virtus.pro's eyes, you know, you watch the game from SK's eyes, you watch the game from everyone but Heroic essentially. So I will say it's impressive what they did. Some of the matches that they won there. I mean, it has to be because I didn't expect them to get close to getting out of this group. Close games against Astralis as well. That's super nice to have. But we have to see more. And the big thing is like this is where I feel like Virtus.pro failed more than Heroic succeeded. Is if Virtus.pro gets nuked against Heroic like 10 times, like how does VP lose that? That's what I don't kind of get. So I mean, I actually haven't watched all the VODs of their matches, but I'm just impressed just looking at the numbers, and that's really the only insight I can have to Heroic, to be honest with you.
Okay, Zeus, did you see any of Heroic at the tournament?
I watched the main Heroic match. I watched was the VP match that decided their qualification or not. Right. I thought that was really cool, and VP of course had a lot of pressure to play because it was in Poland. So my opinion is not going to be good. I think their result is really great, especially the way the succession of results. Right. They start off against North, who is one of the teams that broke through and is right there. They beat them, but it's a local rivalry, so that match is always going to be different. Then they lose to Cloud9, and they must be thinking that their chances are getting slimmer by the minute. They lose to SK in devastating fashion. And then they have 2 really, what should be considered like the hardest matchups along with SK, and they are able to pull it off. So I really like the way they did it. Astrala is, I don't consider that much because they know, like, when it's local rivalries, I don't see it. I don't count it for a worldwide scene. That these teams know so much about each other. Like if you see Immortals and SK play each other, you can never count that. Oh my God, they're the best team because they beat SK, because they understand so much of how that plays. Sort of like I was saying, right? They prepare themselves for this. So I think it's cool, but I don't see them breaking into some top 8 or something like that. At least not right now.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Since Moses didn't watch many of the games, like one of the things that was really key for me about how they got out of this group was that they didn't do it some easy way, you know. It's not like they had just some crazy flukes and like the other team didn't know anything about them and just underestimated them. Like all the maps that they won the T side. And the maps that they won was Nuke and Overpass. If you can win the T side of Nuke and Overpass against Virtus.pro, Na'Vi, North, that's fucking baller right there. That's like put it this way, if you won on Nuke against Virtus.pro, but they just had a terrible T side and you won 12 rounds of CT, that's the fluke win, you know. That's the one that's not going to happen again. They went second half T side and won 8 rounds on T side on Nuke against VP. This is big time shit. The problem is that in itself is the reason why they're not going to be an amazing team, because they have to get their maps. They got these 3 maps that they can play, and beyond that, even though Snappy in his reflections thinks they can play all the maps in the train as well, like I think they can play these 3 maps. They can play Overpass, Cobblestone, Nuke. Cobblestone, you almost have to take out the equation because everyone plays Cobblestone, so that's not really a sleeper pick, you know. Nuke and Overpass are cool because most teams don't play both, so you're always going to have a little shot if you get one of those maps. But my big problem is precisely that they had to win T-sides to win these maps. Because actually, when I look at them as a team, what's great about them is they are like those other Danish teams, North, Astralis, where they have the really good T-side. Like they have the good in-game leader who has his maps, that he has like his regimented style. But the big flaw they have is, unlike North and Astralis, they don't have Kirby and Config and Magix and Device. You know, they have some alright players, but the problem they have is their guys who they want to be the stars are the youngest, most inexperienced members of the team with these 2 recent additions, Nico and Juggy. So the big problem for them is, I think that's why they didn't do as well on some of the CT sides. Like you can't just like think about it this way. If you have someone in a bomb site who's half as good as the player running into the bomb site, you could get the drop on him, you could have the positioning, you could have the crossfire. It's going to be still really hard to win most of those scenarios, though. I mean, when you're playing against top teams, they have some of the best entries in the world, you know. It's so tough to hold. So I do think that they can, if they get the right map, you know, they could still give us some cool upsets. They could have good T-sides that throw teams off, you know, they study them well. I actually have a lot of respect for this guy, Snappy, who's the in-game leader. I think he's done an amazing job considering, like I say, he hasn't got any talents. Like, it's not like, put it this way, when North rose up when they were Dignitas, they rose up and everyone said, yeah, great job MSL. But you know what else they said? Wow, who the fuck's this Magix Boy guy? Wow, Config changed his whole game around. No one's saying that about any of the players in Heroic here because no one did it. They were just a good little unit and there isn't any superstar player at the moment. So with no superstars, we've seen this before in Counter-Strike. The best you can hope for if you have no superstars is to have like really good tactics and then you scout really well. And if you have that, maybe you can have some cool upsets. You can have a one-off day when someone's hot. But you're not going to win tournaments. You're not going to crack big teams in best of 3s where you might have to play a full 3 maps. So I think this was cool. I think it was kind of the perfect storm for them to get out. You know, they got everything they wanted, but it's a bit of a reach. Yeah, I would say I don't see this happening again. Put it that way. I think it's real tough to have it unless, as they hope, you know, one of these players does develop further. Because at the moment, you can't have your 2-star players be like the 2 guys who it's their first big lands sort of type scenario. You know.
What a luxury, though, to be someone like the tier 2, tier 3 talent in the region and have an in-game leader who can teach you how to fucking play the game. Like that's incredible to be able to have that kind of guy who's saying this is how you play the game properly. This is how we do tactics. This is how you trade. To be able to spend like a year there, yeah, like eventually you're going to outgrow it if the team doesn't improve with you. But it's nice. It's a nice luxury to have.
Yeah. Certainly. So here's the analogy you've made me think of here. So we all know that when Luminosity got FNX and Taco, now things started going really great. Fallen became like a way better player. But remember when that team first was
Zeus
put together?
As well. They got Zeus also.
Sure. But remember when that team didn't have those players and before they had Cold Zera, okay, yeah, it's true Fur was like a star talent, like you can take him out of the mix. But beyond Fur, when they had Steel and Bolts and ZQK and Fallen wasn't an AWPer, they didn't have a lot of talent in that team. They didn't have a lot of firepower, and they used to win exactly the same way. They had to get their maps against an opponent where it was best of one. Maybe they could upset, but famously, they never won best of three, Once you got to a big best of three and you're playing the world's top teams, there's a reason why it's not like they were just months away from doing it. They had to upgrade the roster. They had to find Coldzera. Then they had to figure out, right, it's time to bring FNX back in. It's time to get a coach in. Like, what do you think on this, Zeus? Because you were obviously there when it all came together.
I think that's a very fair assessment, right? As Kaboom, Keystars, those early days before LG, they were a really solid roster. I think they actually kind of innovated the meta of the game with like their Mirage, right? They had one map where incredibly every team was willing to play them, and in the beginning, and they were really solid. They innovated the way to do it, but it was never it wasn't the default style that we had in SKLG, where we had the talent that they could be taking positions on their just natural instincts and thoughts and how the understanding of how the map works. We actually had to have I say we, but it was them. They had to have some insane strat with like 4 different smokes, Molotovs everywhere. Like they had to clear everything, and they did it amazingly. But once teams found out how to hold that, that's when they didn't realize that they needed to change, right? When that wasn't good enough anymore. And moving forward, when they got those players, like Coldzera was the find of the century in my eyes, because he came out of nowhere. That's really impressive. But they were able to see in Taco that he wasn't the most skilled player getting the biggest numbers, but his role and dedication to the team was important. They got the experience in FNX, and that was amazing. And I think that translating that to Heroic, I think that over there, like from LG was the best team. Heroic is theoretically the 3rd best team, right? In that area. So they're going to be a farm team, but they're in a really good position where if they learn quickly, they will be fighting for titles or at least very deep runs in tournaments. So I think that's really cool that they have an in-game leader like that, and they have someone that they respect that can teach them a system that will make them better players overall, even if the end result probably won't be in Heroic, right? These players will have a lot to be thankful for their time there.
No, I think, by the way, that's a really good way to say it about the Kaboom thing. Because, okay, actually, let's put it this way. There is one player who can be a star in Heroic. There's Valde, okay? He's been pretty good. But aside from him, so if I equate him to like a bit like when they had Fur and Kaboom, okay? This one player, you look at the team, you're like, that player's really good. But the difference is, when you look at Heroic now, you look at it and you go, wait a minute, 8 rounds as T on Nuke against VP. I've got to watch this demo. Like, obviously, I can see it wasn't some player just going crazy. I got to see what strats they ran here. That's what it used to be like with the old Keyed Stars and Kaboom. You never looked at the team like, what? They beat Fnatic on Mirage? They must have some insane play. You go, wow, what fucking strats did they use for that? That's what people used to watch the demos for, to see, like, holy fuck, they've invented the smoke here, that if you do that, it cuts them off here. So that's the thing. That's cool, but you're not going to win many tournaments doing that, You can't trick people like 4 times in a row when they know what's coming.
Oh yeah, especially in today's day where you create a new smoke now, tomorrow it's already online and millions of people have seen it and can adapt on the fly, right? It's not 1.6 anymore, where something like that would take months until a land.
Where YouTube wasn't even around back then, so things were much easier to hide. Yeah,
they were, but that's why also the players wouldn't keep up with the scene, right? We've seen 6 months, 1 year now that everyone just is constantly updating themselves strategy-wise, play style-wise, individual plays. Like you see Stewie on Nuke doing a little move on where he's on one side of doors and goes to the other side and rotates around, right? It's something silly like that, but I've already seen it done in other matches. It was something that he was doing 2 weeks ago. So like everyone is learning so fast every little thing. It's hard to be innovative and use that to keep yourself on top. You're going to do it for a one-time shot. You have to use it at the right time.
Okay, so since there was so many up and down results, as in like teams you didn't expect to coming out, teams didn't, I don't want to go through every team, so let's just go to this, okay? Before we go into the NA stuff, we have to address Virtus.pro and SK going out in the group stage. And I will say, people went overboard with talking shit. Like, they did go out of the group stage by going 2-3 when everyone else went 3-2. It's not like they went 0-5, There's a big difference there. And also, they both lost really close games, They both were like a couple of rounds from getting out of the group stage. So, if you were SK Gaming, Zeus, should you be panicking at all at going out last place in this tournament?
No, never. I mean, this is the second time that they don't make it out of groups, and coincidentally, it's the second time that they keep out of semifinals, I believe, right? You correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Sure.
But I think that they can't panic right now, right? This is a new lineup. It wasn't something horribly like it started horribly with the Cloud9 thing. That's when they should have been shaken up, and that's what happened. I think, right? I think that was the deciding moment right there for them, how it started. But I wouldn't panic from them. I'd wait at least another 3 events. If things keep going that way, then of course I'd look into what should be done to fix it. But I don't think. I mean, they just had a tournament 2 weeks ago where they reached the final, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think SK's takeaway from this has got to be Phelps played incredible in the 5 maps that they played. And now
so did Fur. He was a fucking monster as well.
So I mean, considering, that's just actually astounding how they didn't make it out of the groups with those 3 players. I mean, it's only 5 maps, and so I mean, there's a smaller sample size, but I mean, Phelps is still the highest rated player that was at this event, which is very, very impressive. And also, let's remember, we all knew that there was going to be an adjustment. No matter how good or no matter how similar Phelps and FNX might have played, which I don't personally don't think they really play that similarly. But we knew there was going to be adjustment period because this is not. This is not like plug and play. This isn't like you can just insert someone and expect to still be on that god tier, top best of the tier 1 level anymore. And I mean, even think back, SK at the major with Fox looked phenomenal. They got to the semifinals. They looked very, very good. But at ECS before that, they didn't look that impressive with him. So I mean, this is now a situation where you have to give this time to develop, and you have to see how it's going to be down the road. And I don't think it's even close to panic time. I still think this team is going to bounce back. I still think they're going to be contending for championships here and there as the year goes on.
I think this tournament here, if you actually look into the details of what happened to SK, I actually think it shows that they shouldn't really panic at all. Like, I think one thing that they really fucked up in this tournament is they thought, this is my guess, they thought they could try all these new maps out that they didn't play before. Because let's face it, every past episode, one of the things we criticized, even before FNX left, was the map pool was getting way and way worse. They couldn't play Mirage anymore. And then all of a sudden, Overpass they started losing on, So at this tournament, they had some really weird pick bans where I was like, how the fuck did it end up on that map? So I'll give you 2 off the top of my head. First of all, how did they play Cloud9 on Nuke? Neither team even likes Nuke. And I went and I looked, at the pick ban. And the reason why is SK themselves removed Cobblestone. So they could have just played Cobblestone instead. And both teams are pretty decent on, but I'd probably still pick SK to win that one, Then you go to the VP one, the one that ended up being the 16-14 loss that basically cost them a chance to go to playoffs. This one gets onto Inferno because SK themselves removed Train. If you're SK Gaming and you really think that this new lineup's really good and you can be a number 1 team, I get it that VP's really scary on Train. They're super good. But you've got to believe that you're very scary as well. You've got to go, listen, we're both good on Train. Let's play it. Let's see who's the best now. Trying to go to these weird side maps and be like, listen, we practice Inferno or, we're trying to bring Nuke into our pool. I get it, but I think that trying to do it all in this group stage hurt them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with Nuke, I could see them playing in a best of 3, right? We're not going to take it out, but if you pick it, we'll pick it. But in the best of 3, you not only leave it in, you actively pick it against Cloud9. That was the biggest mistake in my eyes. I mean, that's not the time to try something out. It's either you are so confident that you're just going to smash them that you're like, whatever map goes through, or it was just really bad map pick analysis. And I speak with them a lot. I know that. And I'm going to be saving the coach on this one, but the coach told them, their actual coach, Dad told them not to go with Nuke, that they shouldn't go, but they ended up going with, right?
Like, I will say this, in the past, Cloud9 always used to say, we don't play Nuke, we never played it. But that's exactly an example of where,
Yeah, but if you're the favorite...
Yeah, this is the point, is that it's true, they didn't play it, but the other condition, it can't just be this team doesn't play it and we can pick it. You have to be able to play it yourself. And SK hasn't really adapted to Nuke even in the last 6 months, So that's where I feel like you just go with the safe pick there, You definitely know how to play Cobblestone.
It's that just a lot of teams have fallen into this, and we always criticize it. And I know it's always going to be different from looking at it from our angle on the outside as to when you're a player, the person doing the pick ban. But it just feels like that Nuke pick was like not picking to any kind of strength. It was picking towards an opponent's weakness. And I think that
you're just gambling. They don't know how to play, right?
Yeah, right. And that's kind of the scary part. And I mean, this is the thing. More often than not, that works. That's fine. But like, there's always going to be that one game where, like we found out after that matchup, where Cloud9 was just like, yeah, automatic just came home one day from getting lunch at Panera Bread or some bullshit, and he sat down and said, "I want to learn how to fucking play Nuke. He watched like 4 Nuke demos, and they had automatic calling specifically on Nuke, just because he did that one day. Came home, watched all the demos, told the team what to do, where to play, and they kind of practiced it, I guess, a little bit secretly. By the way, the whole controversy of not playing SK in practices before a tournament that they're going to play them at. Now it looks like there's a reason why. If we go back and we look at all the heats Cloud9 got from that, this is the reason why. I mean, even their coach Valence came out and said we play them in practice. We just we avoid them for a week if we're in the same group at a tournament, or if we have an online match coming up next week, we just don't play them for 4 or 5 days. So I mean that starts to make a little bit more sense now, and they caught SK off guard, and that's just what it is.
Okay, right. Before we leave the SK topic, Zeus, I have a question for you.
All right.
Last year, despite what everyone may think of it, because I'm actually someone who separates personality and personal conflicts from players. Fallen is one of my favorite players to watch, especially because the fact that I knew he was the in-game leader and the AWPer, and he was one of the star players, that just makes it so entertaining to watch, knowing that context. But what has happened to Fallen? Because I haven't seen that Fallen now in like 3 months or something.
That's a hard question, honestly. I still think he's up there. He hasn't had the best tournaments lately for sure, but speaking with him, I know how much he's still been studying the game, and how my personal take on this is with the changes they had, right? With Fox they knew was going to be a temporary thing. They let him know from the first beginning. They were very correct about it. But that puts him in a position in the team where he will just have to do what is needed. They will change one thing or two for him, but they will keep their identities overall. With Phelps, I think that Fallen is one of the players who has most had his roles change, right? Before you'd see him, he wouldn't be. I think there was even an HLTV stat where he was the player that least moved as an opper, right? He would always be in the right positions. And I think now, if you look at it, it's like we have Fur and Phelps as a duo, and we have Taco and Cold as another duo, and Fallen seems to me like the odd man out. So I think he's rotating from side to side now, trying to support these duos, and he's never in the position himself where, like in Overpass, he wouldn't be rotating. He'd be taking care of bathroom almost all by himself, and he was a god at that, right? He would play to his strength, and I think he's fallen back a little to that mentality of sort of the Keystars days where he would support for ZQK instead of opping, right? It's trusting so much, and oh my god, Phelps and everyone has so much firepower, I should be supporting them, but he's an incredible opper, and he's one of the best positioned oppers out there, and he does some amazing things. So I think he has to just put himself into better positions again, and where someone will be supporting him instead of him having to always be the one supporting for everyone else.
Having Phelps in the team, who obviously, I mean, we can see in terms of raw talent, the guy's fantastic. And now that Fur's come back to being this monster player, if you really are going to have Phelps, Fur, and Coldzera, and potentially they're all going to be like superstar level talents, does Fallen actually even need to be much better? Could he just be a support type player now? And could that be the new style of SK and succeed?
They're going to have to show us otherwise, right? I think that what they had before was more consistent. They were able to control better the matches, especially like one of the biggest things that SK ever had was the dual op with Cold and Fallen, right? So Phelps likes to pick up the op as well. He can do it very well, but should Fallen like be opening up for like his op for Phelps? I personally, I know him. I know he would do it if he feels that's what's better, but I don't see it being better, right? I see it sometimes if you leave Fallen there, he can take it. He's so experienced, he can take care of an area by himself, and you just rotate 3 players on the other side and have them make some crazy aggro move to do something together, right? Because before you had Fur, which is a god at going aggro and doing things. Now he has Phelps, which can back him up, right? If you throw in Coldzera as the surprise element supporting them or something like that, that can make a big damage. Instead of one guy coming through a smoke, you have a perfect flash and 2 gods at aggro going through, right? And that would put Fallen in a better position as well. I don't think he's... Everyone likes to say that, oh, he has too much to do. He doesn't need to have someone helping him, but I just think that times change and people adapt, and it's time for him to either get back to doing fully what they're used to or create a new style and try it out and prove me wrong.
Okay. What's your sense, Moses? Because obviously that's the thing. It's like a crossroads, right? If Phelps is playing so well, mate, do you go down that route? What do you think?
I don't think this team wins championships without Fallen being the opper that he used to be. I mean, yeah, fair play. If he takes up a different role, then they make it prove it, just like Zeus says. But personally, at the moment, I don't think they can do that. The thing is, like, we have this kind of like, we have a lot of conversation about is an opera even really needed? Can you get by with 5 rifles? And yeah, you can, but the teams that have a dynamic opera, the way that Fallen is, the way that Device is, like how those have so much impact on the game. It's hard to make it work. There's not very many of them out there, but these are operas that can control the game. Even if it's just an impact round, even if it's just forcing the defense to shift, getting one pick. But Fallen is just an op talent that we don't have in anywhere else in the scene. Even with Simple playing his best op is not the same as when Fallen has his best AWP. The way that he dominates bathrooms, the way that he can be so mobile around train. He's probably the best opper at moving between shots and finding a new position and just being very, very like sneaky the way that he is. And that offers such a unique look to their opponents that without that, this team is less scary to me as an opponent.
Okay. What do you think the future of this SK core is, Zeus? Like, where do you see them being at in the next events?
I see them coming back up to their performances of at least semifinals, right? I don't know if they will win it because, of course, there are so many stacked teams, as we've mentioned previously, right? But I will always see them, especially with this core. If I know their work ethics and their methods, and if they are able to get back to that and just get back to playing what they know and not overcomplicating things, I will always see them as the top 4, no matter what. I don't see if you put lineup to lineup and the way they plays them ever being below that top 4 lineup effectively, right? Okay. I think they'll.
I mean, as I kind of set up when I explained like what I saw as the context, I think there's a lot of reasons that it's not that they're excuses. These reasons just create a scenario that probably won't happen again. Like, I think actually what happened here with some of the weird pick bans, I think they'll learn the lesson from that and they won't do anything crazy. Like, admittedly, the Cloud9 one was an opener, you know, they probably thought it's one of the easier teams. Maybe this is where we gamble and we try a map we haven't played before. Okay, I can get that. But going forwards, I think if they just play the maps they're good on, they pick ban correctly, I think, yeah, I agree. I think they should be a top 5 team again. It's not now whether they can win. That probably does mean they have to make this tough choice. Either we go back to old SK style, Fallen becomes a big part again, or, and this is tougher, you create a whole new style of the team. Which, listen, if you can do that, we'll all give you props. But that's because it's so fucking hard, you know. And it's tough to know.
It's so much more work, isn't it? Though it's like that. That's like taking steps back for like a good 2 to 4 month period. And you never know if you're going to get back up there. That's the dangerous part of that, I think.
Whereas, here's the thing. So this will sound weird because technically SK was the last place team. But actually, the one of the two that I'm more worried about was Virtus.pro. Because here's the difference with Virtus.pro not getting out of the group. Is that the 3 games they lost were 3 of their best maps. So, like, that's no excuse, you know. I can excuse SK doing a stupid pick and ban and playing Nuke against a team they don't know plays Nuke, or having Inferno where no one's really played it and it's really up and down. But you can't go and have Nuke against a team that's not got that much skill and go, oh, we lost our best map. You know, I think there were like 12 maps in a row or something they'd won on Nuke. You can't go against, let me see who else it was.
Navi on train, North on Cobble.
Exactly. You get Navi on train in this day and age. This Navi, that's supposed to be a VP win. Cobble against North, again, that's a win for VP. Remember, they only needed one of these 3. So to me, that's the one that's I can't really forgive that. You know, I think they fucked up in the play there. Like that, they can't blame it on anything else there personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, but also, I mean, VP is also the team where this doesn't necessarily, I mean, I go the other way with it. I don't think this worries me about VP at all, just because, remember, even though I predicted them to the win, the thing was that you had said in the previous episode is exactly true, and we all know it. They're going to have tournaments like this. Yeah, I think it's just more. It was more of a shock and more worrying just because it's Katowice, right? Because they're supposed to be playing on that stage in front of their crowd. But I mean, I do think this is just kind of standard Virtus.pro. We all knew this. We all kind of expected this at some time. Just didn't expect it here at a tournament in Poland. By the way, this is now 2 years in a row, because last year it was when Virtus.pro was at like their deepest slump, where I've gone to Katowice expecting a fucking baller explosion of a crowd with VP on the stage. Yeah. That's just eternal disappointment.
At least you weren't up at 4 a.m. this time, though, mate. So that's an improvement, right? At least wasn't cheese sandwiches at 4 a.m. again.
Was it a 19-hour day?
Okay, actually, Zeus. On the topic of VP, Do you like trash talk? Do you enjoy when players get a little bit feisty? You know, they fire a few shots. Do you like it?
Dude, I come from the 1.6 days in Brazil where every match
Exactly.
was face to face, one computer at the other.
Yes.
You stand up, point your finger in the guy's face. Those are the glory days.
Okay, because there was a moment in this tournament that people did see, because I don't go on the Reddit, but listen, I love it. Like, to me, that fires me up. I love seeing this, okay? So did you see that when Virtus.pro got knocked out, if you remember, when Virtus.pro won DreamHack Vegas, okay, and obviously their big rivals are Astralis, you know. They beat Astralis, they won Vegas. Taz tweeted this picture, right? It was a picture of him pointing up, like, number one. And he said something along the lines of, like, you know, like,
love us, hate
we're
us.
number one, you know, love us, hate us, you fuel us. So the second Virtus.pro went out, Device retweeted that tweet, so it went to the top of his timeline. And all he said, Moses, was he just said, just trying to refuel him, guys. That is fucking... if this was like a TV show, I can't wait for the next episode. That is an amazing cliffhanger. I want to see the next time these two teams play each other.
By the way, that conversation like between them gets so fucking blown out of proportion by fans.
Obviously, yeah.
Because you know who's the first guy to tell Device to get healthy and feel better and then, you know, rest up
Sure.
and take is Taz. So I mean, this is let's not hate on either of these guys. They're having a little bit of fun with the fucking rivalry.
No, but the whole point is, as long as it isn't like, you know, something serious that's like actually like, if, like, for example, if you talk shit about someone's like personal life, yeah, that would be fucked up. But this is just competitive juices, you know. These are two guys who want to fucking play each other and they want to beat each other in this next match. That's awesome, I think.
Yep, let's leave the mothers out of it.
I think that's healthy. Yeah, I mean, it gets boring at some point if you have no one to direct your practice, your rage, and everything against, right? Even if it is in the competitive sense, because most of the CS scene is friends. Like, we will talk at every event. You live with these people more than you live with your family. But at the same time, it's the coolest shit to just be able to say something, you know, that you're getting in their Achilles heel and you're getting them fired up. It's just the best way to do it.
Well, what Snacks got up and grabbed the mic from me and just shouted, "Let's go Navi" to the whole crowd when Navi and Astralis were playing. That was pretty sick.
I think I know which way he was leaning on that one. Okay. So.
By the way, I mean, here's the thing. People who hate trash talk, do they really want... Because this is the most boring, triggering thing to me right now in the scene, is every time a team gets knocked out, some player gets on Twitter and is like, "We will come back stronger." And they post a little fucking emoji of some asshole flexing his biceps. And I'm just like, fucking stop this, please, God. Something... Like, there's got to be something better to say than that.
First of all, Moses, show a little bit of respect to Pasha. Just call him by his name when you're talking about him. And secondly, no, here's the thing, though. What's funny is, Moses, I nailed this at Vegas, if you remember, because on the desk, when we came to the semifinals, and it was going to be Astralis versus VP, we brought up the last bit of trash talk, which is when Taz got mad at Kierby, and he responded to him, you know, like, I hope you perform next time, and we'll crush you, you know. And my point there, okay, I think really holds up, and this is the whole point, is that in general, if you're a team like Astralis in general, okay, you won't really be like directing trash talk because in theory you're number one right now. Like you've got every reason to be motivated. You know, you just want to play games. That's it. But if you're like VP and you've had the same 5 players for 3 years and you've played 1 million LAN tournaments and you've had so many times you were up, so many times you were down, just coming to work every day, you're not going to be super fired up, you know. No one has that level of like energy and motivation. So if you can find a little thing about these guys that you want to play and beat to kind of drive you a bit more and make you think like, you know what, we're going to be even more ready for these fuckers next time because they tweeted that picture about me. That's why I think Taz does that. I think it's a way to like charge him up, get his team going, because they've just played forever, you know. They're not going to get motivation from getting a new recruit or doing finding a new tactic, you know. They're Virtus.pro. They play the way Virtus.pro works. They played for 3 years together. This is for him. I think it helps him more than anyone else to trash talk.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's that whole thing like unite the team like, against a common enemy, right? Like just get everyone a little bit fired up. So, yeah, I mean I think that's the biggest issue. That's why personally for me I have so much respect for these guys. Zeus, I imagine you have a little bit of you agree with a little bit on this angle is. When you like, this is the issue that all the former pros from like North America had coming back into it, even though they were like legends of the past, guys like Fraud, guys like Storm. It's just like you don't have like the mental energy to like sit down and devote yourself to like relearning a new game and having to play against all these younger guys and having to adapt all the shit that you knew from the previous version, that's exhausting. It's harder than you always expect it to be. And I think at a certain level, these, the older guys who try and make a comeback at any point always feel like they should have more respect because of their past accomplishments than they're getting. And I think that's another mental hurdle that there is to get over. And the fact that these guys can still do it, whatever it takes, even if it's a little bit of trash talk, even if it's a little bit of showmanship, like, props to them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, VP, these guys are legends, right? They've been at the top of the scene for as long as I can remember professionally. They've been through it all, through all the roster changes. They know their formula. They know what works for them. They don't change. Especially in the past, they were even more competitive, and their trash talks and the way things used to happen. But it just makes me respect them that much more, right? They keep true to themselves, even though the times changed, and now it's ethically incorrect to bad talk anyone or say anything, even if it's just for momentum, right? And they keep true to themselves. I think that is phenomenal. And the way that they play, they keep forcing it through every round. It doesn't matter, right? Everyone says, make changes. They don't. They know what worked for them. And I think that's so cool. And for new players, right, this is something I went through with Immortals that was really big. Is one of the things we don't appreciate is, like I said, right, I've been playing this game since 2002. I didn't equate that earlier, but it took a harder way of learning it, that people evolve, right? The average player now is way better than any fraud or anyone was at those days. There's just no comparison. And for these older players that are trying to get back, they do not get their head in through it. I look at Kogu in Brazil, which was one of the beasts. I know Thorin highly regards him as one of the best of all time. Exactly. And the amount of hardship he's facing in game is surreal, right? He hasn't been able to make the progress that everyone expected of him.
Yeah.
And to find that dedication is even harder when you've already seen it all. Like you said, it's not going to be reaching the final of the championship. It's going to be amazing for that day, but it's not going to change your whole life dedication and passion, right, about it if you've already been through it. And that's something that the newer kids you see now, they like the Yugi from Heroic, all these new kids that are popping up out of nowhere, they have this passion, right? For you to stay, like, when you first fall in love with this game, the passion you have, the dedication, it seems worse than cocaine. You're addicted to it. You can see nothing else except Counter-Strike. Just Counter-Strike, for the love of God, let's do it. And I love this, right? And that's how you see these kids coming out of nowhere in the way I look at it. And it's so hard for someone else, right? They have to understand that their roles change. If you are these experienced players, and I think VP does that well, is we're not going to try to be at flashes, then we're going to try to be more experienced and just do everything on the past experiences that we have and know what's right or wrong. We're not going to try to outskill, out-aim everybody.
Yeah. The only drug I actually would like to endorse is Danish Counter-Strike, everyone, okay? So stay safe, stay off hard street drugs, so stay on clean, tactical Counter-Strike from people from Northern Europe. That's all I'm going to recommend to the fans of this show. Okay, so let's get into the NA part of this discussion, okay? Because, Moses, one of the problems with these discussions, okay, is that I like when we do discuss general topics, but if it's too abstract, you're not really going to get any solutions out of it. So when people say these really broad topics, okay, like, the problem in NA is, they just care about money too much, or they care about this, that. Well, I mean, in every single team, I'm sure there's players who don't just care about the money. I'm sure there are players who are fired up to want to win, or there's some player who is trying to do this role correctly. Can name me right now in the scene, what are some problems you see in NA right now? What do you think's holding NA back from having a team that was like top 4 at Katowice, for example, or a team that's potentially going to be one of the teams we want to put in this mix of like potential champions, etc.? What's holding them back? What's a key issue right now?
I think obviously the biggest one is leadership, but not just that. I think there's 2 critical pieces missing on every team in NA that there's no readable solution to, and one of them is an in-game leader, and the other one's an AWPer. At both of those positions, we're severely lacking in impactful players, talented players. And the leadership thing doesn't even have to be tactically. I think that can just be leadership in terms of, being that guiding voice on a team. I think another thing that we're missing is I still think there's a massive element of team play missing, just basic fundamental level of team play going on in these teams. I think we still see very, very much too many individual fights going on. And the other one is just, then this one is going to be a little bit more abstract, but just the general mentality of when you are. I sense there's a mentality within NA where, since not all teams are like top tier and they're good, like there's no point in playing against them. There's no way that these teams can improve against the lower tier NA teams. So every team collectively just like keeps their level low because they never feel like they're getting good practice. There's no respect among teamer players to make them say we can get something out of this scrim, or we can learn something from this scrim. And I think that's been going on. That was happening when I was playing 2 or 3 years ago as well.
Okay, so let's go point by point then. So Zeus, someone who's been... What I thought would be great to have you on the show is not only are you a coach of an NA team now, so you know some of these players on a personal basis, but you've obviously, with SK guys and Luminosity, you were in the NA scene as like an outsider for a whole year. So I want to ask you, first of all, on the first point Moses made, like, why do you think there are so few in-game leaders? I mean, it's not even that there's not good in-game leaders. There's not even that many people who actually do the role, you know?
I don't know. That is something I've been thinking to myself and trying to figure out, and I just, for God's love, I can't understand why, right? Everyone knows the importance, and people seem like they don't even understand. Like, if I'm an individual player here growing up, I'd say there are no in-game leaders. I'm going to dedicate myself to this. I'm just going to like shoot myself straight into one of the top tier teams, and no one's doing that. And even from experience, it seems like, yeah, people will watch the demos, but they'll watch the demos for their positions. They won't understand. They won't try to understand the whole system, right? And the ones who do, they'll half-ass it from the experience I've had. And they'll either give up too soon, because in-game leading, let's be honest, like leadership is something that normally comes, I think it's like genetic, right? Some people will have more instinct to be a leader than others. True. But in-game leading, the strategic part, anyone can do it. It's a skill that you can learn. You can go, if you just bury your head inside your computer every day and start watching these demos, at some point it's going to click and you're going to understand. I don't see people doing that. And they should, right? And no offense to Sean Garrett, because I like him, but for him to still be considered the best in-game leader in North America after all this time, and him not being on the top team, he actually gave up on Counter-Strike when I moved here to the United States, right? and that's what, almost 2 years now, and no one's tried. The only person who's tried has been Stanislav Peter and my team. And to me, that's mind-boggling, right? How in an entire scene you have something like that, and while you have in the Danish scene, you have 4 teams with in-game leaders who can more than capably take care of the job.
Yeah, Moses, do you have any thoughts on that? The lack of in-game leaders. Do you have any like theories as to why it might be?
Yeah, and follow me on this one.
Okay, we're going deep, right?
Yeah,
buckle in.
I actually think I made a video on this, and I think I really do think it extends all the way back to CGS, because I think one of the big things is when CGS died, that was where all like the 1.6 players and in-game leaders and all the teams had gone to. Like that effectively like ended 1.6 in North America, and then when it died, instead of going back to 1.6, which was like devoid of any tournaments, of any money, no sponsors were interested in it either at that point. There's also the economic crash. All the old guard of players just quit, just went to college, found a job, found a career, did whatever it is they wanted to do. So you never had that, like, not the legacy, but you never had that knowledge of like playing the game for 10 years. I mean, these were guys who had played from 2001, 2002, 2003, all the way up to like 2007 to 2006, and they never passed that knowledge on to anyone. And all the people who kind of rose up to fill the ranks and like what was left of the scene, which was, I think, essentially only ESEA was the only online league that started in the ashes of CGS because there was nothing. The only people that were left to fill the void into the professional scene were players from Maine and players from Premier who had struggled to get into the professional divisions for years at a time and were never able to do it. And the only reason they made it there is because of a technicality of just getting shifted into a void where there was nothing. So, I just don't think that they ever properly learned how to compete on a pro level in NA, and therefore there's just never been any knowledge passed on. And ever since then, no one's learned the right way to do it. Because remember, even when ESEA was around, that was the only thing. There weren't really tournaments for 1.6, so really the Counter-Strike scene didn't actually bounce back and have any real money or real competitive nature to it until CSGO, which was, 2013, late 2012? Yeah. So, I mean, And from there, it's just kind of been like the scene's grown so fast and matured in so many ways, but leadership and tactical prowess among players here just hasn't been one of them.
So I actually made a video on this exact topic. That's why it's good that we started here. And so basically, one of the key theories I came up with is that I actually think NA as a region just doesn't even value in-game leaders much. And so that has two effects. One is that it means that people don't want to do the role because they know, like, if people don't value in-game leaders very much, this is a good way to get myself cut from a fucking team because I'm the in-game leader. I might be the lowest fragger, you know. That's a real great way to get yourself kicked out the team and have someone in the team go, oh, I'll just take over in-game leading and, you know, we don't need that guy. First of all, that is like a trend you've seen over and over again. I actually charted in the video how pretty much every in-game leader candidate had been cut from a team at some point in time. Then you've got the factor that because people don't want to do it, the knock-on effect of that is because you don't have loads of people trying, like one person in every team being a pure dedicated in-game leader, like, you know, not win or lose, I'm always going to be the in-game leader of my teams. Because you don't have those guys, you don't also get the guy where you hear the rep that he's a good in-game leader. Like at the moment, if you asked like Stewie and you asked Liege and you asked Tarek, so one player from each of the top teams, right? Who are the other good young in-game leaders? Like, who do you think the future is? They won't know anyone who's got any kind of rep. Like, oh, this guy's, listen, his team's not that good, but he does all this demo research, his tactics are good, because no one wants to do the role. So you've got a few players who can sort of be a makeshift in-game leader, like who can be a temporary guy, but there's not a whole bunch of people killing themselves to do that. Whereas actually, before North got really good, before Heroic just had this result, you already heard these stories about MSL and about Snappy and about these younger guys who are coming up. You hear the story that, like, listen, okay, the team isn't that good, but this guy, he puts all these hours in and he's really found some cool strats on this map. So I feel like actually it's like a vicious circle, because on one hand, the scene doesn't seem to really respect those in-game leaders. And on the other hand, it makes people think, well, fuck that, I'll be a different role player, you know?
Yeah, there's probably some truth to that, just because, I mean, that's the nature of being, you know, like I guess a pro athlete, I guess, to a certain degree, is that the casual fan just looks at numbers and they see numbers and they say this is shit, and obviously that means you're gonna get, you know, attacked more on Reddit, on forums. But
I mean, even players do it right in NA. Yeah. I see a lot of players who are obsessed with that shit.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That's certainly a big deal. I mean, that's certainly part of the problem, isn't it? I think the big thing is there's also just going to be a situation where I think when we're in an industry like this, where the stars of these teams are so young, like, how are you going to convince a 17 or 18-year-old guy who wants to become an in-game leader to sit down for 5 hours a day and watch 4 demos or watch 2 demos heavily critical of what's going on and make sure you take all the notes? I just don't think people want to do that. And if they're going to do that, they're going to say there better be some fucking money into it, you know? They're all bad reasons, but they're all reasons, right?
So yeah. Zeus, if you remember when you first joined Team Liquid, okay, it's easy for you now that you've got Stanislaw, to be like, no, we respect in-game leaders, you know, we got the best in-game leader, like, you know, we've got all the pieces. But you were in a team where they were doing that approach of, like, what I call like a temporary solution, like a player who isn't an in-game leader, who doesn't want to be one necessarily, is like, oh, I'll take it over for a while. So like Hiko was doing it for a while, Nitro did it for a while. Yeah. But these guys, if you really sat them down, they don't want to be in-game leaders, you know? So until you got Stanislaw, like, what do you think of this aspect of the scene? Because it's amazing that you've got top teams not even having the role, right? Just swapping it amongst each other.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what you guys said, that it's undervalued, and that's part of the problem, the mentality here, right? Because I watch these players and they're like, oh, he's doing such a bad job in-game leading, I'm going to do it. And when it was their time to do it, they're like, oh shit, this is hard, right? I can't take a week of this because I'm almost ready to blow my brains out. It's so much study that you have to do, and and people forget, right? If they think that the pressure is high on a player that has to make a correct move, try being in one of the most intense situations, like in a tournament where you know that round is everything and you're in a low buy. Make a decision there, and if you do something wrong, it's not only the community is going to shit you, your team's going to shit you, right? Because players, if they don't value the in-game leader, the second you make a wrong decision, they will fucking crucify you.
Okay, put it this way. I've got a good example. Okay, I'll just pause you there a second. Imagine that you were an in-game leader of a team, and you tried to do that call that Glaive did on like round 28 of the 3rd map of the major. Okay, so you tell everyone, okay, we're playing against like one of the best trained teams here. We lose the game if we lose this round. Just buy Tech 9s and armor and rush fully outside to the bomb train, right? Try doing that, and then imagine that Virtus.pro just sprayed them all down. They never got any kills. They just died, flashed, sprayed down. If you're an in-game leader, like the abuse that you would get if you aren't some amazing in-game leader, you'd be cut from the team. Like that could be the end.
That could not only cut you from the team, it can end your career and something
For
like
sure,
that.
yeah.
Right, and that's a huge part of the problem. I think that's one of the benefits that Liquid had is all these players did try it out, and they're like, "This is really hard." So now I respect it, and now I have a newfound respect for something that I thought was easy, and I saw in actual this is really hard, right? So that's why we went after Stanislaw and why we needed it, and I was dumbfounded that no one else was trying to go after these things.
By the way, I mean it ties into this, but from like kind of the other direction. Part of the reason of being shitty, being an in-game leader is yeah, players in NA don't respect it as much as they should. But it's more so like if you're an in-game leader and you do all this studying and you come up with this tactic and you want to try it out in a scrim and you call it, everyone knows the play and they do it, and one motherfucker does something wrong in this tactic. And then you go to him afterwards, after watching the demo, you're like, hey, you can't do this way. Like, this isn't the play you're supposed to make based on this tactic. And he's just like, well, yeah, but, if I hit that shot, if I just get that, I should have had that kill.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, please. Like, this is, you're not even supposed to be here. This shouldn't even be happening. And that doesn't click in more often than not.
Right, I've got a system then. I think I've figured it out, Moses. Here's my approach, okay? I'm going to get all the teams that don't have an in-game leader at the moment, and I'm going to put an in-game leader in their team. So even if they don't want me to, I'm going to put like Daps and Adren and Semphis. I'm going to put them all on the top teams, right? And all I'm going to do is they do the same thing they do now. They call the strat, they prepare the strat, but they just have shock collars on all the players. And as soon as that player goes outside of a red area that he's allowed to go in on the map, they get shocked immediately. And I reckon, give me a month, okay, Moses, I promise. I'll have some of these guys on board. I mean, I'll have some of them on board. Unfortunately, some players will just be electrocuted to death, but whatever happens, okay, Moses, I'm going to get some good players out of this.
You can't fix them all, Duncan.
You can't. That's the problem. Some of them, like I'm pretty sure, like Nafly or something, would just get electrocuted to death. Like so, there'd be one of them just wouldn't learn from it. It would be a tragic story. Okay, so another issue, okay, that Moses didn't really address directly, but I know it's one that's been brought up again and again. This is something where I remember you mentioning it actually on Twitter, Zeus, which was this notion. There's like two components to it. One is the idea that like NA doesn't practice properly. Now, you must be able to tell us about that, because the time that you arrived with Luminosity into NA was exactly the era when a lot of the NA teams were like struggling and stuff, and your team became the best team in the whole world. So you would think logically, right? They must have loved to practice you. They must want to practice you every day. They must want to learn from you guys. And yet we hear these stories that some of them didn't want to play you, or some of them played you, but they just played you and they didn't scrim properly. They just played as if it was like an official game or something. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so that is one of the biggest issues I have with NA, right? And I will start off with something good and then move on to the bad, right? The good is you can tell that over the last year, NA has over a year and a half. NA has gotten better, right? They have evolved a lot in terms of just their peaks of potential and how they've been doing. They have been getting the results. Their practice routines have gotten better and more consistent, but there still is a long way to go, at least in my opinion. And the thing that I even posted on Twitter is one of the main things that kills me is when we practice these teams, I'll say like at least half of the teams that we practice, they will practice one way and they will play another. And normally I'd be fine with that. They're like, oh, this practice, they're just trying aggro setups, right? But if over 20 practice pans, everyone is only doing aggro, and when it comes match time, they're all playing safe, they are practicing wrong. They are they're not practicing a real something similar to what they're going to be executing. And the second thing is like coming back to that Cloud9 versus SK thing. I can't judge because I wasn't on the inside, right? But I think, yeah, for Vegas, they might have been thinking that might have been cool, but let's be honest, they aren't on the same level as teams, even the results. So these practices when we go to Europe, you practice everyone, unless it's a major and you're trying to do something for a group. You should be aiming to not be the best at that one tournament. You should be aiming to be the best team that you can be overall. And for that, it's always been in Counter-Strike, at least from my experience, that you have to practice against the best teams. The best teams are just normally way above the medium talent in terms of how many mistakes they will let you have in a match, right? If you are trying to execute a strat on some medium tier 3 team, your strat will have a perfect execution most of the time. Even if it isn't perfect, you can probably still win that round, and then you'll go into a professional match thinking that, oh my god, this strat is so good, and it's actually really flawed. And in NA, you don't get a chance to see those, right? And for a team that right now, I see the meta being that you have a lot of defaults, but what catches people off guard in those intense rounds now, you see a lot of people doing those sad little execute plays or having an idea behind something. And most of the time, the amount of flaws that you see that a player is going either in the incorrect timing or doing something, and you see that he didn't perfect that in practice, right? He didn't look something very simple. That happens even in Liquid. That you practice something one way, but when it comes time for it, because you've been practicing against the wrong teams, you don't see such a simple flaw in the strat. And I think that all comes from the mentality of NA and the fact that things here have been. I come from Brazil, where the scene is really like poor. At least it's a lot better now, but it was really poor when I left in terms of investment, in terms of teams. So you kind of had a benefit that we were able to get all the good players in one team or two, and just filter the talent into this direction. Have the people with the same attitudes, and they are the ones that everyone looks up to. So with the Games Academy, with everything in Brazil, we filtered it down. So people, team play wise, practice wise, they are better over there than in NA, and that's horrible to say because we don't even have that big of a professional scene over there, competitive wise, right? Financially. And when they come over here, everyone's impressed by it. When you see Luminosity playing Rank S, you see two players, they're just calming perfectly. They have no egos, they have nothing like that. And in NA, that's something that I've been trying to work on a lot because people, like Jason said, they don't listen to each other sometimes. They have if it's an in-game leader, they will always have their egos. They don't see the perfect, like they don't see how fruitful someone like that can be to the team and how important they are. And as soon as they screw up, they give up on that person. And that's something that the mentality has to change. But we're going to have to find pretty soon. I see that there's going to have to be some team here that starts infiltrating that to sort of the base players, right? So the next generation is going to have that.
If you think, here's a great example for you, okay, is that if you think about how the average player who hasn't played at like the world class level thinks, they nearly always have that stupid, kind of like what Moses is saying here, they have that stupid way of thinking about the game, which is, oh, if I'd have just like killed that guy, it would have been fine what I did there. Like, it was, if I was just a little bit off with hitting the headshot, it would be fine. But what's funny is if you remember when the Keyed Stars and Kaboom teams came up, before they got the really good lineups, the first thing that they were really famous for was just being able to win scenarios where they had the man advantage. If they got 3v2 and they got 2v1, they played it out correctly, and that's not about headshotting. That's just about playing the angles correctly, team playing, coming with that guy, knowing what he should do, what you should do. And that's fundamental Counter-Strike, You can put in the star players later, but you've got to have that base to become a better team. And unfortunately, NA is like the other way around to me. I think they have loads of good players. I mean, I think Optic's a perfect example of this, because when Optic had Stanislaw, they were a fantastic team. Now they still have 4 of those players. They have everyone except the in-game leader, and they're terrible. They never win a map. So it's not like the players got worse overnight. No way. But they don't play the same kind of Counter-Strike. They can't.
Yeah.
I think also, I mean, I think there's probably a big lack. I mean, this might be different for Liquid with Zeus, I would imagine. I guarantee Optic isn't doing this at the moment with the new in-game leader. And I imagine Cloud9 wouldn't. I feel like there's just a lack of knowledge of, or a lack of caring, maybe is a better word for like theoretical Counter-Strike, like heading into a practice. If you're going to practice the right way, right? Every time you head into a day of practice, like it used to be in the past, because the ESEA ran like maps by week, it'd be like, we're working on this map for a whole week. Well, now by day, you have to like come in and say, these are the situations that we need to win. We're going to work on 2v1s. We're going to work on communications post-plant. You need to be able to like go in and say, if you're going to work on post-plant situations, you need to look at a bomb site on the minimap, with all 5 of your guys who, a lot of times now are in team houses, and say, if we plant in this spot, these are like the 3 important positions, right? And this is where these are the 3 positions we want to occupy after the bomb gets planted. Let's work on getting people to these spots and look at these crossfires that I set up. This is why this is going to be so effective. So all of our post plants, make sure you guys keep it in the back of your mind that we need to get to one of these 3, like we need 3 people in these spots. And then you practice that so that when it comes match time, it's natural. Or it's also, if X player dies, or if we have to give up map control and ramp room, what kind of rotations do we make from there? And I feel like there's no teams who talk about that before going into a scrim, so they know what to work with. And that's the big thing, because if you don't have that set plan, you don't know what's going wrong. All of a sudden, you get out of a scrim and you're like, okay, what happened? You're like, oh, we just couldn't keep hold of ramp room. Well, why the fuck not? Like, why couldn't you hold ramp room? And they're like, I don't know, I just getting killed, or I was rotating down to the lower bomb site, like we said. I don't really know where it broke down, but once we lost ramp room, we just couldn't hold on to the lower site. If you don't know what you're doing in that scenario, you can't ever identify. You can't ever go to the guy that you play with and say, all right, well, hey, next scrim on nuke, let's change something up. Let's try something different. See if that works. Okay. Maybe that'll be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So Zeus, I've got a good question in line with what Moses is saying right now. So, and I'll give you an example, okay? So in a sport, like let's say basketball, right? Let's say at one point in time, like LeBron or Kobe, one of these guys who's the best, if you're like a young player, okay, and someone tells you, oh, just work for hours and hours on like simple things, free throws, for example, they're going to think, well, I mean, I know how to do that, like I already do that a little bit. And they wouldn't realize that the best player in the world still does that every day, 1 or 2 hours, he practices. And he does that because even though he's the best, he's got to remain the best, or he's got to ensure that he tries to improve even, And so in this same sense, I actually feel like this is where maybe NA teams also suffer, because when Moses says theoretical Counter-Strike, okay, so when SK Gaming was going into ESL 1 Cologne, you guys were already major champions. You were already the best team in the world. But I remember there was an interview where you said that each day the team actually did more hours theoretical work than actual scrims. Is this true?
That is true. And that's something that I've been keeping up. I think at least the week before the tournament, you do more theory than anything else. One, you don't want to show off too much of your. That's when you want to save your strat, but you don't want to save it against one team. You want to save it against everyone that you can, right? And 2, the theory is more important. So online with what Moses was saying. So if we're playing Cobblestone, I think it's more important nowadays than having these full strats where everyone knows their smoke perfectly. It's like, okay, if we reach the end of the round, what are the 3 most important smokes we're going to have, right, as a team? Okay, so the first place we have to get out is lane. The second, but now the smokes don't matter that much. We need just like stairs and chicken coop, so we know what we're going to have these mollies. So if we only have 1 molly, the priority is here. If we have 2, it's going to be stairs and chicken coop. And if you have that entire thought process figured out of how we're going to approach every situation to their ends, even if we have nothing, where like every order we need to peak and everything like that, that's when it gets impressive. And more on that is like you were mentioning LeBron, but I watched coldzera, the way he practiced, even when he was the best in the world, considered last year, when he was at his most impossible times, right? When he was the best, that's when he was practicing the most. And you'd see him, coldzera doesn't play rank S. He doesn't play these things. He likes playing with his friends, and his friends are average to below average, right? He plays for fun. But if you're watching him play these pugs, and he would be making every single little strafe movement for every position. He would be flashing out and calling for his friends to just flash out these positions. It got to a point where it was just like so subconscious in his mind where he just won't make a strafing mistake. He will never forget to clear a position, which is something that impressed me at the major. I think it was the first time I saw coldzera get caught off guard, which was by Pasha, right? I had never seen that, and I was behind him a lot of times. I never saw coldzera get caught off guard where he didn't know where someone is coming. And that just shows how important it is for these players to have the dedication and understanding of how the step-by-step should go. And they have to understand it on an individual level and a team level to some extent. Sure, the in-game leader has to understand more of the strats, but things that people don't realize about SK as well is coldzera, half the matches he'll call as well, right? He watches so much and he does things to such a perfection that he will actually help Fallen in calling a lot. And I think that a lot comes from just the ethic he has on how he works, right? When he's to practice, he's going to practice perfectly, and then they should learn a lot from that, right? Individually and team-wise, and how to prepare yourself for a team and understanding how to put yourself into these crossfires, afterplans, and everything that Jason was saying. You have to get it down to the detail. People think it's a really broad thing. Oh, I didn't understand this rotation. If you're not understanding the rotation, you're screwed, because when we're getting to the top level of Counter-Strike, everyone understands the rotation. What they don't understand is that one, I should have strafed to the left instead of right. It gets like very fine details, and the general scene in NA is very far from that level still.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note here as well. I heard this is something I heard at the major. I don't know if they necessarily want it public, but I just don't give a fuck at this point.
Come on.
I'm not going to say who to me, but
okay.
It's nothing bad. It's just, this is now, we've gotten to the point where we have JDM from Liquid has actually sat down with Fallen and Coldzera at the SK house. They have invited him over for hours at a time to help him improve his opping.
Wow, so they're doing charity work as well as being a top team. That is very impressive. I'm really impressed with the SK guys.
It's super nice. Tax deductible as well.
Okay, come on, explain to me.
This is how is this happening? Why is SK like this is the thing that the SK knows that like it's the saying, rising tide or the rising tide raises all ships. So like they're the ones that are helping the oppers are helping JDM. I've heard that they're helping one of the other new in-game leaders who's trying to adjust to the role as well. I forget which one it was. But this is something that's so ridiculous that we now have Fallen, who has like single-handedly promoted the Brazilian esports team with Games Academy and all that. And now he's helping our pros. Like, why aren't our pros doing this themselves? Why don't they have enough respect for each other to actually just play a practice, properly? Like how we still hear stories about teams who just hop into a server and just start scrimming. Who just like don't put time and effort into practice. SK is putting time and effort into their own practice, and then they're adding effort onto that by helping like North American players, oppers, in-game leaders learn how to play the role in the position. Like it's actually embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, with the JDM thing, I was actually a part of that, and I thought it was really cool that one, he was open for it. And it wasn't so in depth like maybe someone made it sound, but it was just bouncing off ideas. But sometimes bouncing off idea against a peer that plays the same spot as you or has the same role, you'll get you'll get an insight into how he views the game, and that can most of the time change a lot in how you're going to play, right? And I think that's sad because over here I see everyone likes to make fun of each other all the time. They always like that friendly banter, and I love that. But at the same time, they should also support each other and get better together, right? Since if there was one team that was better than everyone and they want to keep themselves, that's fine. But everyone's sort of leveled out, and we've leveled out below average, let's say, right?
Yeah.
At this moment. So everyone should just do what they can so everyone can get better. Sort of when LGSK joined here, even before I joined them, they were helping raise the scene because, wow, finally they were playing people who were doing the right thing. So you learn a lot playing against these players, right? But it gets to a point where you stop learning as much as you should, as you can, because you've already gotten most of their habits and everything like that. That's when just a talk with anybody will help, right? And that's something that happens a lot in the scenes. While we were at SK, we talked to Navi, and like I witnessed Fallen and Guardian like sitting in a computer. It's like I do it this way, and he does it that way, and I just think that is so cool to see, because that's something that I don't see in any other sport. You'll never see like Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi like, oh, I like to dribble this way, and that's why I'm so good at it. Yeah. And in CS, that's normal, but people don't take advantage of the fact that the community is so close.
Okay, I've got a question along these lines then. So, I remember recently I saw a really extreme version of the problem I'm thinking of, which is like people in NA playing against SK, so when they were the best team in the world, but not taking advantage of it by not scrimming properly, And the most extreme version I heard was when people who were NA teams were talking recently about the Renegades team. And some of them said that it didn't surprise them that Renegades wasn't good on LAN, because they said in some of the scrims, Renegades was basically just rushing. Like all they did is join the scrim, just rushing the sites over and over again, and they weren't playing as though they had like, a set thing they wanted to learn or a set thing they were trying to try out. Now that's a really extreme version. I doubt every team's doing that, but what was it like in terms of when you were on SK playing against these other teams? Did some of them understand the concept of practicing correctly?
Yeah, the Renegades example, just before you get to SK, I think it was actually even me that probably was one of the
fair enough
the person that said that, right? And we just lost to them right now in Pro League, and I have no shame in saying. But part of that, I imagine, they were so pissed at us that they wanted to show us, because against us in the actual match, they were very scrimmy. They tried to take opportunities. They'd walk up on us, and that's how they actually practiced, and it worked out, right? Okay. So props to them for making that work out. But generally, practice with them sucks. It's them trying different setups. Like you'd have Mirage, and you'd have 3 guys catwalk 2B on a gun round, and they're CT, right? And they're like, okay, they just left A fully open. How does that happen? And they're like, oh, we're just gambling. And you don't gamble sides in practice. You're just supposed to try new stuff. And they'd be pushing and everything like that. It was horrible. And then even while we were SKLG, we'd constantly get the living shit beat out of us in practice by Renegades. They just like, they would just kick our asses left and right. And when it came to
championships of the world, okay.
Normally it wouldn't happen like that. So I actually said I was pissed off. I'm like pissed off, and I actually want to see them do well, because they kind of remind me of the Brazilian community. They came from far away where there wasn't as a scene, but they're not taking the opportunities as best as they can, right? So they are one example. And then there's a lot of teams that do like that their head isn't there. Either they'll cancel scrims because of something stupid, or they will not practice correctly in these matches, or just completely give up midway and buy random guns and do something different. And that's just a waste of everybody's time.
Moses, if you hear that, like, you are actually from America, you know these players, you're friends with some of them. What is the obvious solution to that? How do you get people's head in the game?
I mean, it comes back to what I just said. You have, first of all, you have to have respect for the people you're playing against. You have to realize that every scrim you go into, you can learn from it. I think that's the first big thing that we've always missed in NA is respect among the teams, like the different teams that are there. Because, you know, if you go into a team and you know you just can't learn anything, you just automatically think you're so much better than them. You're not going to try, because even if you win or lose, you're just going to say, yeah, they just kind of suck, or yeah, they were just scrimmy. There's really not a great answer to that, because I think part of the issue, I mean, it comes down to leadership again. Part of the issue why some of these scrims get so out of hand and get very scrimmy like that is because there's not an actual leader in any of the teams that says, guys, shut the fuck up, we're actually going to run a strat here. Or it's not like it comes down to, you know, the theoretical Counter-Strike before a scrim. No one comes in and says, this is what you do, right? This is what we're going to work on today. This is what we need to focus on during this scrim. Like, make sure we're focused on that. So we go into scrims and no one's focused on any kind of goal to achieve, to improve, to attain. There's nowhere to go. It's just like you hop into a scrim and you just scrim. You scrim for the sake of scrimming, and you think that is going to be the experience to improve you. Go ahead, Zeus.
Yeah. No, and like jumping on that is half of it. The other half, I think, is just such a really big point here in NA that I've never seen, is rank S, right? It sounds stupid, but I think it just gets in these players' heads and builds a mentality, because like when we're boot camping in Europe, this was with SK, with Liquid, these players are playing NA, they're playing FPL over there. And there's a player like, oh, that was unlucky. There's something like that. That's how they come over here. Over here, in rank S, it's like, oh, this stupid fuck. Why is he doing this? This is stupid. Why he would never do that? He like everything is an excuse. And I've seen that translate over to practices, right? In Liquid, and they're like, oh my god, why is he peeking here? Why is he doing this? And you start getting in your own head, and like you start actually getting dumber with the game because of it, because you cannot understand correct CS anymore. He's like, oh, why would this guy peek over here when he's in a 3v2? Well, you just saw a flash come from his teammate perfectly for him over that. I think that's why he did it, right? To just shut down the round. And that rank S screws the mentality over here big time, in my opinion.
By the way, that's a huge thing, because even in the past, like even like our pugs, like way back in the day, we're taken very seriously. And if you're spending 4 hours a day on team practice, and then you go into rank S and you play 4 or 5 hours and you're just having fun and you're making stupid plays at a professional level, you can't do that. This is also why I think streamers really struggle with being pro players, is because if you play bad Counter-Strike for a significant portion of the day, good Counter-Strike is not going to come to you automatically. The correct play to make, the correct timing on peaks, the things you can get away with, like, it just doesn't come naturally to you. It's not ingrained in you the way it has to be in a pro player. And that's a big issue. If I was in charge of fucking rank S, I'd kick out all the fucking YouTubers, I'd kick out all the streamers, and I'd be like, it's pro players only, let's go. And it's just a system there where, you're not going to get the best team play, you're not going to get the best tactics, but you're going to get very basic. You practice your fundamentals as an individual against other pro players. And if you're I think that's a massive issue when it comes to just one individual player.
Okay, let me ask you this then: is this too harsh a concept? So Zeus just said here, like, Cold Zero doesn't play rank S. I mean, this guy's still one of the absolute best players in the world. A bunch of players in Europe don't play FPL famously, some of the Astralis guys. Okay, what do you think if there was NA org owners listening to this podcast, right? Would it be too harsh to just say, ban your pros from playing rank S? They can't play rank S. Instead, just have them only play scrims and practice for the scrims. Would that be too ridiculous?
I think so.
Yeah, that's hard, because it's going to go a lot on the player mentality, right? Because there are players who can play rank S and they won't see it, like Elige and Liquid, right? When he plays, he'll play like 1-2 maps a day, but he can completely differentiate, and it's not fair to him. And there are the streamers who make that, but on the example that you cited, right? Cold Zero, when he's playing with his friends, he will always be doing things professionally. I just enforce it to a way that Rencast has to be a little more professional. The
Okay.
thing is, it's just to me, it seems too lucrative for the streamers to have a more chill environment where it's all fun than to have something serious.
It is a way to help like individual brands when you have, I mean, banning the YouTubers and shit was like, like might be extreme, but I would definitely ban.
No, I mean,
Most
listen,
of the
I'm
players
with
who aren't
you.
going to
Let's
take
get
it seriously.
Summit. Let's get Mo. Let's get them all out there, Moses. Your words, not mine.
Put up the wall. Put up the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it helps with brand, obviously, if they're on streams, if they're able to make YouTube clips and build up their own channel and their own following that way. But like here's the thing, and this is this retarded thing right now about the NA players is
Okay.
they're right, but they're wrong because they make the argument that Rank S is a tool that they can use to become better players, but none of them actually use it that way. So it's not actually a tool to improve; it's a tool of their own destruction at this point.
Yeah,
From
it
from
could
what
be
it, from what
used.
it, from what it looks like.
If they forget all the scrimmage are and they it's JDM and Nitro are alive and around now in Rankcast and they play a 2v3, you can take that, of course. That's something that you can work for your team play, or you can try some little silly individual plays to do something. But you can't base your entire gameplay experience off, I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna molly here in White Peak because this works in Rankcast, and then you're doing it in an actual match and there's some guy holding every angle like a team is supposed to. This is all thought out. So it has to be. I think that one, like a limit should be like 1 or 2 matches per day, 3 at the most, right? If the person is really good at handling it. And the other thing is they have to try at least, like Cold Zero, like say the basics, right? You have to at least do everything like a team is supposed to function. You can't have 2 or 3 players just doing stupid shit. And what's sad is Rankcast has gotten to that because the players who do the stupid shit are the ones who are winning, right? They're mostly in the top of the charts. They're winning those prize pools, and everybody wants them on their team because, for a pug they'll be doing great, but when it translates over to their team, they're fucked.
So another thing that is a concern for me is that it seems like NA teams hold on to rosters that are like confusing to me, at least for a long time. And the best example of this is obviously Cloud9 at the moment. Because when I saw that interview, Moses, at Katowice, where they actually said that they have still decided to stick with this 5-man lineup, I was like, well, there goes any hope of them getting better. Because actually Cloud9's the perfect example, right? Because the key thing is they've never been bad. Like even not making the major, they weren't terrible, but they also are clearly stuck where I can't see how with this 5 they go much further, So they're decent. They can certainly go to big tournaments still. They maybe even will have the odd upset map win. But if they're never going to change the players, I mean, what do you think of this?
Makes me want to bang my head against the wall. I don't know, like, how is this? I don't even understand how, like, the conclusion is possible. I don't understand why. Like, here's the other crazy thing is Automatic also gave that interview. I don't think it was at Katowice. It might have been, where he said he admitted they overperformed in Pro League finals in Brazil when they won.
Yeah.
So it's like your biggest accomplishment with this lineup is an overperformance that is not likely to be repeated. To me, it just seems like this team has hit the ceiling, and I don't. I've actually talked with a couple of the players on this team, and they all kind of acknowledge that in their own like subtle ways. Like they're kind of a little bit in denial about it, but they all kind of acknowledge that they're getting to that point where they all kind of know they need a change, but like everyone's just kind of holding off on making it for some reason. And that's the thing. It's like trying to impart upon them that there are like, we always talk about this. There are windows to when you can win championships.
Yeah.
You are wasting part of your window.
Right, like Moses. So I make fun of Nip because all Nip ever does is say, let's kick the 5th player. And they never look at the problems with their 4 players. But I almost feel like when I look at NA, I have to apologize to Nip because at least they kick a fucking player.
Yeah,
this team's like, well, we can't kick anyone. We have to keep all 5. It's like, well, that doesn't work, does it?
Talk about playing on hard mode. Like it's unreal.
Okay. What do you think of Cloud9 at the moment, Zeus?
I think Cloud9 are a team that during regular seasons they will always be at the heads. They will always qualify like for the regular pro leagues, ECS of the life. And those tournaments, they are very inconsistent. I personally, if I were them, I would maybe consider a roster change. I hadn't seen that Automatic interview where he said that he thought Pro League was an overperformance, and that's kind of a big deal to me, right? Because if he thought that, okay, Pro League was our greatest achievement, but that's how we're supposed to be playing, we're just fucking up and not playing like that, that's one thing. But
I mean, he basically said, like, just because I actually remember, he basically said he thought SK underperformed in the final, which makes sense because on 2 of the maps they got smashed, you know? And then he said that he thought it was just Cloud9 hitting all their shots, is what he said.
Yeah, I remember. I thought it's the best I've seen them look, right? While watching that event, every one of them was hitting their shots. But if I'm part of the team and I think that that's an overperformance, that wouldn't be making me happy, right? And I'm always for doing everything you can to win. Meme aside, what Fallen said, right?
Yeah.
You should always, you should always be aiming to be better.
Like
if you're the second best team in the world, you should strive to be the best. If a change is necessary, go for it. If it's a role change, if it's just a mentality change, you should always be aiming to be better. You can never settle. And right now, none of the NA teams are outstanding. None of them are miraculous. The closest one was Optic, and they are far from that right now. So I think everyone should be looking at doing something to get back and be doing better.
But that's one of the things. Okay. By the way, the one that you referenced there, that joke about Fallen. Okay, here's the thing. Fallen obviously was only talking about in terms of in tournaments. You know, you don't try and enforce every rule, because actually it's the opposite in terms of teams. Like, you should do everything to try and win. And this is one area that I have to call your boy into question here, Moses, which is you love Stewie, okay? And you always make it sound like everything, you put all the hopes of NA onto Stewie. You're like, oh, he's so good as a player, and you know what, he's so young, and he's so hungry, and he's so driven. Okay, to a degree, it certainly seems like it, but one area that I feel like he has to take the next step is if he's going to be this like leadership figure within Cloud9, and he's the best player in Cloud9, and he's the guy who's the future of Cloud9, like, they're not cutting him at any time soon, right? Then he has to make the hard choice, which is, okay, am I willing to make the tough decisions to win? Like, one of these players probably has to go. They're all legends of Counter. Well, I mean, call them Shrouded Legends probably a bit too much, but they're all players who are veterans. They were around before me. They had success before me. But to be a champion as well, to be that driven player, you also got to sometimes make a tough call. Like, I like this guy on a personal level, but someone's got to go. I've got to get this other person in my team. I need this in the team. That's where I feel like the talent, Automatic and Stewie, they're missing that at the moment. They're too chill.
They're also young. I mean, I agree with you. They do have to get there. I told them that much just kind of beats. I was just like, you guys are now the leaders of this team. You guys need to act like it. You guys need to actually step up and become that leader. It was like one of those real fucking stupid movie speeches where it's like, become the leader you were born to be for North America. But,
okay.
But
all right,
no,
all right, Moses.
But no, they actually do need to get there. But here's the issue: look at who they have to cut. Okay. Skadoodle, the greatest stopper in North American history in CS:GO, one of the best of all time in CS:GO.
Yeah.
Shroud, who is very, very popular, great streamer. He had a lot of potential when he was younger. And Nothing, who's been like the 1.6 player in North America for a decade now. Like how do you expect? I don't know if it's hard to be bothered or upset that Stewie or Automatic haven't decided to cut these guys yet, because
okay, but here's the problem. Let me put it this way. I realize in the SK scenario they had personal friction and all that sort of thing, so there's a good reason to cut FNX for that reason. But put it this way, this is why I'm bringing the example up. If we went by the logic that you just used for Skadoodle there, or Nothing, right? All of that fits to FNX and more. This guy's a legend. He has won multiple majors. No. He has been one of the best. But when they felt they had to cut him, it was time to go. Doesn't matter,
Don't get me wrong. I agree. I think players need to be removed from this Cloud9 team. But I also have a hard time blaming Stewie, who just turned 19, who has been in the professional scene for 1 year, from going up to Jordan and be like, hey, man, saw your billboard the other day when I was driving into the office. I'm going to need you to get the fuck out of the locker room, leave all your shit at the door on the way out. We don't want you on the team anymore. Like that, that's just too much to ask.
I know what they need to do here, Moses. You ever seen the movie Up in the Air, I think it's called? Isn't that the one with George Clooney, where his job is he gets flown around the country to fire people, right? Because it's really awkward to fire people. So Cloud9, I have a fee, okay? It costs $2,000, and you have to put me up in a nice hotel, and you fly me in, and what happens is, Shroud and Nothing come into the office, and they're like, where's everyone? I thought it was a team meeting or something. Everyone else can stay at home. They don't have to watch the carnage, right? And I just come up and I say, listen, Shroud, You're one of the best streamers in the world. We want to keep you on the brand. Streamer only, of course. I hand him a little envelope that's got his golden handshake, that's like $2,000, new DX Racer chair, and you're going to be our best streamer, okay? Nothing. Listen, it was beautiful having you in the team. You used to be a legend back in 1.6. Maybe we'll make some videos about the old days, but we either need you to come into the office now, you need to work there, or we're going to transfer you, okay? I'll do the hard part, okay, Moses? And then they can come in when the bodies have been cleared away, they can come in and they can pick who they need on the team and who they're going to have, because someone's got to make that fucking awkward conversation, please.
By the way, Duncan, because we've had this conversation so many fucking times, and maybe Zeus, you can actually answer this because I don't necessarily know anymore.
Okay.
But one of the big reasons in the past, when you and I have talked about, if you're Cloud9, do you keep Skadoodle or Shroud? Like, if you have to cut one of them, which one do you pick? And I've always say you keep Skadoodle, just because there are no other uppers in NA like that can actually that have that level of talent. Like, this is probably also an obstacle to teams, to someone like Cloud9 wanting to cut someone, is who the fuck do you replace him with that is going to be good? Like, I mean, look at the immense amount of gamble they took to get Stewie out of this team. If Stewie didn't pan out, this team would be dog shit. It would be nothing. Okay. And then they got Automatic, who was like average in TSM, and they're lucky he's flourished the way he did, because otherwise they wouldn't even be competing at events like Katowice. So now all of a sudden you're facing.
So what is the question for Zeus? Reformulate that in a question.
Who would you pick up if you had to take Shroud off? Who do you put in his place? If you had to take Skadoodle, who do you pick up to put in his place? Is there any promising young talent that can fill those positions?
Oh, thanks for throwing me in this one.
Just fix NA, please, Zeus. Can you just do that, please?
Another shot in the foot, but right now, if I had to replace these players, like you said, I'd look at the way that Liquid had a situation going on with Mixwell and Rush. Why wouldn't you look into those players? All right, there's outside talent. You could get a Lowell from Mousesports, something like that, and be interested. I agree with you that Skadoodle is very important. There are no offers today. Just look at what Liquid had to do to acquire BGM, right? And that was a while back. Nothing has come up after. The closest thing that's come up after was Drake, and then he went to NIP, right? Yeah. Available offers out there. So that's a really hard position to fill that I don't see working out. As for Shroud, if they were to choose to go to that route, you could probably have a little bit more options in where you're looking for. You'd have a little bit more freedom and time. But it still isn't easy. I understand the part about what his brand is worth, but if you look at what we did over here, and what my thought process and our thought process here is, Spencer is basically Shroud and nothing in one. He's a legend, and he's the streamer, and he was better for the team in my eyes than those were, and we still had to make a tough decision, right? So I think that, yeah, if they were to choose that, they have more freedom. But thank you for that one.
You know what builds brands? Winning championships.
Exactly.
That's the focus here. Is like if there's ever a team in NA that can compete with the world's best for longer than a 2-week period, they are going to be so fucking glorified in this entire goddamn country.
One thing that and this has been going on over the last while for me, right? And I've been and this is what I've brought into Liquid, is living in NA has one of the biggest beauties in the world, that if you are the top team in NA, you will always be top 8 in the world, because you will be invited to every tournament. They need an NA representative, and you have the spots. So automatically you get a really good boost there. You will be, if we're able to create a super team here, you will be uncontested in the region, basically, right, along with SK. And that is so huge, and and that's not even factoring in the amount of money that's in the NA scene, viewership and love and sponsorship and all that. So I think it's amazing that everything is so spread out here the way it is, and people haven't just jumped on board easier. Because as soon as you make one of the you make one lineup that everybody loves and can actually, like you said, dominate for longer than 2 weeks, 2 months, or something like that, that's when you will just build this scene the way it's never happened before. And if everyone's leveled out below average, yeah, it's fine to say like this, but as soon as you have one pure NA team above every other team, everyone's going to have to start working out and catching up, and that's when we're going to see the scene flourish, right?
Okay, Moses, I've got a good point for you here. Okay, so I remember we've been watching this Cloud9 scenario ever since we started this podcast, so probably 9 months now, something a long time, right? Yeah. And every time they don't get a new player, there's always an excuse. So it's like, oh, but we didn't know Stanislaw was available to go to Team Liquid. Oh, what, Rush and Mixwell? We didn't even know they would consider leaving Optic. Oh, Mixwell, we never even heard of him. This is an area where Cloud9 as an org has to improve. I don't know if you know anything about League of Legends, right? But one of the things in League of Legends that makes it really hard to get players is that they actually have a no poaching rule in LCS. Yeah. You can't talk to a player on his team until his contract ends unless his team lets you. So you have to basically go to like Optic from Hector from Optic and say, can I please talk to Stanislaw? And obviously, if he wants to, he can just say no. Now, in CS, we don't have that. So if you're Cloud9, you could have seen 3 months ago that, this lineup's probably not going to last, okay? You should already be scouting everyone. You should be going, right, when does this guy's contract end? Oh, is there any player problems going on in that team? Right, let's hit that guy up. Oh, would you be interested in the future in joining a team like mine? You gotta be proactive in that sense, because at the moment, Cloud9, it's kind of the same scenario as what happened in NIP in Europe. Again, NIP would be like, well, I didn't know that Godset was going to split up. Oh, how was I supposed to know that this player was available? Both teams keep letting every potential recruit pass them by, and go to a different team and go to this. You got to have your ear to the ground more, So part of that's acknowledging that you have a problem, but then you got to take action,
I think the big thing is Cloud9 management doesn't acknowledge there's a problem. Probably more often is probably point one. I think point two would be they just don't want to spend the money for the buyouts. Point three, the players can't offer them any cheap alternatives for who to pick up that they would be interested in going for.
Okay, but let's address that right there, okay? Because one thing, you won't know this because, again, it's from League of Legends, but actually this is what used to happen in League of Legends, is that admittedly, Team Liquid haven't had a lot of League of Legends success. They've never won LCS, for example. But one thing I always respected, and I wrote an article about this, I think in like 2015 or something, about the guy Liquid112, who's the owner of Team Liquid, is he always... If his players told him this player is really good, he was always willing to do a big buyout or to try and get the big name, And he's done it in CSGO now.
Yeah, I was
You've
now
seen it. He got Simple. He got Hiko. He got fucking Stanislaw. He was potentially going to get... By the way, I don't want to blow any stories, but he was going to get Russian Mixwell. These things were really going on behind the scenes, and now, okay, that hasn't happened, but you see, at least he's trying. He's making the moves, and if he pulls them off, he's going to get the props. Cloud9's doing none of that. They've just chilled for like a year. And if they hadn't have gotten Stewie 2K, who magically turned out to be super good, and then Automatic suddenly have a role swap and be super good, God, where would they be? They'd be in such bad condition right now.
I will. What is the group behind Liquid? They're the Orlando Magic is the NBA team that's behind them.
Is it the Magic? No, I don't think so. I think it's Golden State Warriors.
Golden State Warriors.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know if that deal has given them any extra money to spend into the esports realm. I imagine it would.
Yeah, but Cloud9 just got like $3 million invested a few months ago.
I just know that from talking to I actually just randomly went to an LCS game like a month ago in LA.
Okay.
Yeah, and I spoke to Hotshot. I had like an hour-long conversation with Hotshot.
What did you glean from Hotshot's brain, sir? Tell me.
No, I mean, one thing he said was like just flat out, like it's very difficult to be one of these like pure esports organizations when it comes to making money, especially in CS:GO, where salaries are now blowing up to a massive level. If you don't have like VC funding, if you don't have some massive traditional sports behind you, you don't have the money when players are getting paid like $15,000 by fucking some soccer team from Denmark or $20,000. You can't even come close to matching what players are asking for. They don't have the results or branding to back it up because they don't go to many massive tournaments. The only way to make money as like an organic esports organization is, from what Hotshot has told me, is to get to the major, get the sticker money, get all that for the organization. And if you're not making the majors, then it's a lost cause. Then it's like just sunk cost. So in turn, they have to look for the alternative routes. Like CLG, on top of not being a very good team, so they can't attract any big free agents, they just can't go buy like two massive players and say, come in. And I think that's probably one of the issues I imagine Jack's looking at, where he's saying, I know my team's maybe not like going to be winning a major, going deep into a major. So how am I going to justify going and buying someone out for $200,000 and then paying him on top of that whatever their salary is? Like, I imagine be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a month.
Well, then you can't compete. I mean, here's another example. That's fair. Think about this, Moses. So another thing that they did at Liquid is, okay, until they got Stanislaw, they were another team that didn't have an in-game leader, right? And they were struggling in that area. So one area they thought was, right, well, we can't get an in-game leader right now, so let's get a coach. So they got in Zeus, won 2 majors, one of the best teams of all time. Now, why hasn't Cloud9 got Zeus? Why, they just got Valence, who's a friend of Automatics and used to be the in-game leader of him, 2 years ago. Like, that's another area where they're slacking.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. I'm not.
What do you think about this, Zeus? Like, put it this way: were Cloud9 courting you? Were they trying to get you to join their team?
No, when the Immortals thing fell through and it was all out, one of the things that actually made me come to Liquid was how fast and involved they were in the negotiation and actually pursuing it and making me feel. After that, there were other orgs that were interested in me, but most were European based, right? And then I actually was kind of surprised that Liquid was so far ahead of everyone else. I didn't Cloud9. I don't even know if I should disclose it, but I never got an idea or a message from them, so I don't think they were interested.
Desired.
No, I don't even think they were interested, to be honest.
They didn't make you feel sexy.
To me blows my mind because North America doesn't have IGLs, but one thing they also don't have is coaches right now.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
So
is this the thing?
I mean, they all do get their own turn. Like everyone takes there's an agreement in NA, right? Everyone gets to have Peacemaker for 2 months, and then okay, that's it. You have to give it to the other team now. Let your brother have a turn with the toy, and then he goes to the next. No, Peacemaker, we love you, bro. We love you. So.
so wrong.
Right, anyway, as you were saying, Zeus, so you joined Team Liquid.
No, and just like that's one of the things, right, that made me want to actively join them was that they made these promises to me that they will always be actively looking to have the best roster and do what is needed to have this roster, and that's one of the things that I look most for in the team, right? Since I am no longer with people that I consider like, and don't get me wrong when I say this, but they're not like my growing up friends because most of these SK guys. Like their manager or Fallen, I've known these guys for over 12 years. There's no way you can compare the relationship I'm going to have, right? So since I'm away from that scenario, one of the things I want is to guarantee that they will actively always be looking to be a good team. Because there are teams out here that are just comfortable being in Pro League. There are teams of those levels. There are teams that are comfortable just making it to the finals. And there are teams who just, no, that's not ever enough. We want to keep trying to be the best in the world, even if we have to spend money, if we have to, do things that are absurd to others. To us, this is the goal, right? And there are things that I had to open up on give up on my end to have all these wants that I want for the organization, which is to grow and keep getting better. But to me, it's just worth it, and I don't see any other team do it. So props to Liquid, not just because I'm here, but because it's true, right? Like
it's actually fucking hilarious that a 2-time major winning coach. He's a free agent. He's out in the world looking to spread his wings, and one organization in NA came calling. That's, I don't know, speechless.
Yeah, but it's the truth. That's how it's happened.
I had
a lot more interest in Europe, but in NA it was only Liquid, and I was very interested in staying in NA.
I quit.
Moses, don't lose hope. Remember, the dawn is it's the darkest right before the dawn. Come on, this is the moment when it all turns around, Moses.
Yeah.
So okay, I'll tell you one thing. Okay, that is a positive. Okay, you ready? I'm really digging deep here to get this. This is going to be tenuous as fuck. Okay, you ready? So I will say one thing at the moment that has been an excuse that Cloud9 could give is like, okay, aside from Optic when they had that little run. Well, they were still the best. Cloud9 were still generally the best in NA. You know, they didn't really have anyone like beating them consistently from NA. Famously, Optic used to lose to them. So I will say this. If Team Liquid actually, obviously on paper, has the team to do it, if Team Liquid can become the real number one team and go up on that, then if Cloud9 is ever going to change, surely that has to be the impetus. You can't just let someone go way ahead of you and you're lagging behind. If they're not going to change, then they're never going to change.
I'd say Liquid is going to be the best team in NA for like the past 2 fucking years. They've been that way.
This time it'll happen.
This time. Surely. Okay. I mean, yeah, you'd hope so. You'd hope so. I'm just still astounded.
You're done with hope, aren't you, Moses?
I am done with hope. I'm pretty much done at this point. Yeah, I'm done.
At this point, now that I'm here, I just hope it keeps going with this trend, and we're the only ones that keep actively pursuing it.
Okay. That is a way to be optimistic about the show. Yeah, you're right there, Zeus. I hope everyone sucks and we just succeed. Yeah, okay. So.
I will say this. The goal shouldn't be to be the best in NA. The goal should be to be one of the top teams in the world, one of the best team in the world. And that's, I think that maybe, I don't know if teams actually have that mentality of like, we just want to be the best in NA, but goals need to be higher. And that's kind of that just is where it needs to be. They need. I thought the point you just made is great. Just actually not just made, but maybe like 10 minutes ago about saying you can be the number one team in NA, but even if like you're the 9th best team in the world, you're still going to get invited as one of the top 8 or one of the invited 8 teams to events. You just are. There's so many benefits, and it's so much easier in NA. I don't understand how. Looking at these standings, I don't know. Do you guys scrim premier teams, Zeus?
Oh, we honestly try to avoid it as much as possible, but we have been scrimming them on at least once or twice a week based on we just can't get some practices.
How bad is it?
Honestly, it's pretty bad. The premier teams are bad, but it's bad, and this is like the most honest I can get about it. It's bad because they're just not at the talent level yet, right? But dedication-wise, they actually try to play correct CS. Right? Yeah, it's just it's the talent isn't there, so you can out aim most of them or walk outside and catch them off guard, but they won't be pushing on you. They will be trying to play default and understand the game. So sometimes there are teams when we're gonna play certain teams in Pro League, the better ones, we will play the premier teams as our practice, right? If we're gonna play someone scrimmier, then we'll just keep playing Renegades or whatever.
Can you tell us? Is there tell us a Premier team that actually seemed to play like proper Counter-Strike? Can you give us just an example of one?
I don't remember the team, but the team from Little Man, they
Rush, I think, isn't it? Rush.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. Last season, that the United was a pretty good team to practice against. Yeah. I liked them a little. They were teams that were trying. United, I remember, was the first team in all of NA that executed onto us a fake with 20 seconds left, and that surprised me because that was something we did in LG like. Famous, right?
Ago. Yeah.
No one caught on to that. Like, it's the easiest time to fake someone is at the 22nd. No one believes that it's going to be a fake, and they were doing it. And I'm like, okay, these guys are actually practicing correctly, and they impressed me very positively.
I just want everyone to know that, you said, give me a premier team that's any good, and you said the one with the little man, that's a team called Rush. They're actually in the professional division, so we just confused
That's how bad NA's gotten by now, guys. So. Okay,
it is their premier season. Let's say.
Yeah, exactly. They're rookies. Yeah,
I'm out.
We understand.
I'm out, boys.
We understand. Okay, right, Moses. Okay, let's wrap this up though. So I want to know this, Moses.
Yeah.
Is there something that you are clinging on to? Is there some hope that you see, like something's going to change? I mean, you talk to some of the younger players, some of the newer players, even players that suck like Kuster. So, how are things going to get better, Moses? How is this going to change? Tell me a reason. Come on. Because I don't have to give you any reason, by the way. I'm from Europe. I don't give a fuck about North America. It can crash and burn. As long as Zeus has a good career and his team does well, and as long as you get hired for analysis desks, Moses, I personally don't give a fuck if Cloud9 make it or not. So how do you, as someone who cares about NA, how's it going to change?
I think the big thing is I don't think we need to have some deep. I think it's an unrealistic thing to think we're going to have like some deep league where like the NA professional division is like from seed 1 to 14 is going to be like all 14 teams are going to be competitive and be very, very good. I think what we need to aim for is like 2 to 3 teams, Liquid, Cloud9, one other, can all have good rosters. I think it's entirely embarrassing. I think this is where the mentality needs to change. How the fuck is a third Brazilian team now like top 6 in our region? Like, how has Luminosity like come up like this when no other North American team is improving? I think there just needs to be a massive mentality shift, and it's not easy to predict. I would like to see what gives me hope at the end of the day is that we do have Zeus on Team Liquid, because Team Liquid on paper for the past 2 years has had the best roster on paper in North America. Elige is the best player. Nitro is underperforming, but I mean he's got tons of talent still. JDM is the same way. They have an in-game leader in Stanislaw who might be the only actual I don't even know if I'm going to call him an official in-game leader, but I think there's a lot of very good pieces on this team that can actually challenge. And I think the biggest thing that's hope is once those teams realize that potential, there's going to be a floodgate where a team from North America wins a tournament the correct way, wins with a play style, not like Cloud9 did in Brazil, not like Optic did at E-League, but a play style that can actually last and be consistent and can actually extend for like months at a time. And when that happens, I think lights are going to click. I think the floodgates will open. I think teams will have someone to aim for in the region. I think they'll have a goal to attain to, and teams will have to recognize, and they'll have to start playing that way, and they'll have to start trying to match them. And we just need that one team to actually fucking do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Zeus, give me your final speech to end the show.
All right. So the way I see it is kind of similar with Moses. I think that it will be led from the top down, so that it will have to start with a top team getting this, and it will start by first and foremost just the work ethic, right? It has to change. That they have to understand that give up the rank ass crap, give up all that shit. My job is to be a professional CS:GO player, so I'm gonna dedicate myself to understanding the game and playing it at a professional level as best as I can. Screw the streaming, screw everything else. That's the first thing that has to go for a pro team, right? He can be a streamer on the sidelines, but he has to be first a professional player, then a streamer, not the other way around. In a lot of the cases that happen here. Second, the in-game leading thing, like Stanislaw, is one, but the others will have to show up after. And these are the players that the team respects till the end, right? No more of that. Oh, he did something wrong, so let's bash him, right? The teams here need to understand how hard it is to have an in-game leader, and once they actually start respecting that, and part of that, if they don't have an in-game leader, is make everyone try it out for 3 days just to see how much it fucking sucks, and go from there, right? And once the team have the base ideas and they just start practicing correctly, and the organizations move their minds into that we want to win and not just be another team competing, but want to be the team competing, that's when it's going to start to go, right? And I think that this is going to suck for the older talent, but the older players at some point, the ones who didn't update themselves, they're going to have to start going, right? Either shifting down to less important roles or less important teams. But I think that NNA, it's going to come a little bit to the new players now to kind of set a new example in the way to go and choose wisely who to follow, right? They have to inspire themselves into someone that's worth it, not just because they're NA. They have to check worldwide who they think is best and actually understand why that person is so good at what they're doing and how committed he is to doing that. So
to make things concise, I think North American players just need to learn what being a professional means. It's not just collecting a paycheck. I mean, it's putting in the hours. It's actually working at the craft. They just need to learn how to do that, and they need to start doing it. I think everyone kind of knows. I think just people choose not to be quite frank with you. It's not a hard concept. Just no one wants to do it. They'd rather do other easier things.
Yeah, and one thing, just like summing it up, and this is kind of, it's optional in a way to say it, but it shouldn't be for a top team, is they need to unite themselves more. And this is, I think, the most important thing for all of NA, right? They need to unite themselves. The team is the team, and before that team has to be a team before the organization, before everyone else. You have to be able to say anything you want to your own teammates and not be scared of to lightfoot your words or the way you're going to have to say it because it might offend someone with an ego or something like that. Everyone just has to be on board and be really listening to your teammates, because if they are telling you shit, they are telling you shit because they respect you enough to make you want to be better, to make the team want to be better, right? And I see a lot that over here. People don't speak their minds internally. They will speak it like to the outside world when they're doing interviews and everything like that, but they won't speak it to their own teammates, which is way more important than anyone else could see. If you can give honest feedback to your teammate and him not have an ego, that's what's going to make it work. When I used to tell Coach Zero something, when he was the best player in the world, he had already won a major, and he'd listen, that just shows that his head is always at wanting his team to win. It's not, I want to be the best player in the world, I want my team to be the best. And that is such a huge radical change in thought that I haven't had that experience in NA yet, but hopefully we'll get there.
Okay.